Previously on Solo Leveling, Jinwoo saved Haeun's life by turning Byung-gu into a shadow soldier. While the other Korean hunters departed, he stayed behind to clear out the remaining ants. During this time, Jinwoo reached level 100 and resurrected the Ant King as a shadow, naming him Beru. We were also introduced to a powerful Chinese 5-star hunter and 2 potential future enemies, all while Jinwoo's father observed from the shadows. After the Jeju Island raid, Jinwoo honored the fallen and gained approval to start his own guild. With his guild plans in motion, Jinwoo then stepped alone into another red gate. Inside, his shadow soldiers took the lead, fighting relentlessly against the gate's monstrous beast, showcasing his growing power. Solo Leveling Season 3 begins with Jinwoo meeting the dungeon boss, who asks him if he was the one roaming around killing his comrades. The dungeon boss adds that it is impressed that someone of such small stature has made it this far, and even more so that he can speak their language. The dungeon boss then declares, however, this is where it ends. The dungeon boss then shouts and orders its army, who had been hiding in the area, to emerge. The boss's loud voice echoes throughout the area, but it falls silent when he realizes that no one has appeared. Jinwoo, standing before it, smirks and says, "Someone of short stature? You're a funny guy." He then says, "Come forth." Jinwoo's shadow army emerged one by one from the trees, carrying the dead bodies of the dungeon boss's army. Jinwoo remarked that it seemed there was no one left in his army. The dungeon boss, in disbelief, asked what had happened. Suddenly, something struck the boss's head, and when it caught it, it saw the severed head of one of its men. Meanwhile, a shadow of Jinwoo lands on a totem. It's Beru, with Tusk smiling behind him. Seeing this, the dungeon boss grows furious and yells, "You bastard!" Jinwoo speaks and instructs his shadow army to begin. Immediately, his shadow army, led by his new shadow General Beru, rushes into battle against the dungeon boss's army. Iron strikes with his axe, and the orc guards unleash slashes. Jinwoo walks forward, and 2 beasts approach him. However, Tank swiftly finishes them off with his sharp claws. In the midst of the battle, the dungeon boss screams in rage, "You imbeciles! That's enough." Jinwoo, unfazed, stares at him seriously. He signals to Beru and Igris, and in an instant, Beru cuts off the boss's arm with his claws, while Igris slashes one of its legs, causing it to kneel. While Tusk activated the Hymn of Giant Skill and followed it with gravity acceleration, he slammed the dungeon boss's face and body into the ground. Afterward, Jinwoo slowly approached the fallen boss and told him that if he cooperated, he would make his death less painful. However, the dungeon boss died before revealing any information, and Jinwoo realized that the system must have interfered once again. He thought to himself that it didn't matter because, eventually, he would learn everything in due time. Jinwoo then opened his inventory and retrieved the key he had obtained from the cursed random loot box. In his mind, Jinwoo realized that all the requirements had been met after reaching level 100 during the Jeju Island raid. This allowed him to finally read the key's description. When he looked at it, he saw that the name of the key was Key to the Kartinon Temple. This key would grant him access to the Kartinon Temple, and the location of the gate would be revealed after a certain amount of time had passed. At the end of the description, he saw a countdown: 417 hours, 6 minutes, and 52 seconds. As Jinwoo read this, he thought to himself that the Kartinon Temple was something he could never forget, even though he would prefer to. It was the site of the double dungeon. Jinwoo felt as though the system was calling him back to the place where everything had begun. However, Jinwoo also realized that he had changed. He was no longer the same person he had been before. He couldn't help but wonder if everything that had happened so far had been part of a larger plan from the very beginning. He was certain that someone was waiting for him there. With determination, Jinwoo muttered, "Just you wait." The scene shifted to the Kartinon Temple, the place where it all began. It grew closer and closer, and as the interior of the temple was revealed, statues lined its walls. The glimpse of the massive god statue beast that Jinwoo had once fought, smiling. Jinwoo's voice echoed, "I'll be coming for you soon." The scene transitions in a place where a misty, dungeon-like gate can be seen. In front of it stands a hunter, frozen in fear at what he sees emerging from the gate. He asks in confusion, "What are you?" Before him stands a being with long hair, surrounded by a powerful aura. The being speaks, mentioning once again that what it seeks, the fragments of brilliant light, is not here. It adds that these fragments seem quite elusive. Suddenly, the being falls silent as another figure steps out of the gate. This figure is an elderly man with gray hair, light red eyes, and a tattered blackish-purple hooded cloak, radiating a strong aura. The long-haired being addresses the newcomer, calling him Yogimut, and asks what brings him here. Yogimut responds, saying that he has come to inform him about the land in the east. The long-haired figure asks if this is about the small island to the east, the place of the Shadow Monarch. He then questions Yogimut, asking, "Didn't you decide to take care of that place?" Yogimut answers, explaining that it seems the rulers are planning to set Legia free, a little south from there. He adds, "That is where I shall be going." The long-haired figure then asks, "What about the Monarch of Shadows?" Yogimut responds that, as long as the architect follows through on their agreement, there should be no problems. Yogimut then smiles and reveals some interesting news. He shares that the greatest fragment of brilliant light has been confirmed to be there. The long-haired being smiles at the news and remarks that it's indeed interesting, expressing surprise that he came all the way here to deliver the information in person. Yogimut asks, "Then, what will you do about it?" The long-haired figure responds that if he is willing to concede it to him, then why not? He adds, however, that more importantly, they seem to have been lured here. As he ponders this, a figure approaches them. However, in his mind, he couldn't possibly possess the powers of one of the fragments, and he thought, "It seems he is trying to get in our way once again." The figure steps forward, surrounded by a powerful aura. It is Jinwoo's father, Sung Il-hwan. He suddenly speaks, asking if they are referring to the small strip of island as South Korea. His eyes glow with terrifying light. The long-haired figure, known as the Monarch of Frost, questions what Il-hwan's concern is and what he plans to do about it. Yogimut responds, saying that they have no time to play silly games with someone as weak as him. The Monarch of Frost then tells Il-hwan to try and catch them if he can. The Monarch of Frost walks toward the gate to leave, but suddenly, Il-hwan declares that he won't let them escape. A blade forms in his hands, and he attacks the Monarch. However, the Monarch easily blocks the attack with an ice shield, causing a massive impact and explosion. The scene ends with the Monarch smiling at the attack, while Il-hwan is seen furious. The scene then transitions to Jinwoo as he walks to his car. Just as he's about to open the door, a man approaches him and asks, "Excuse me, are you Sung Jinwoo?" He introduces himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Adam hands Jinwoo his business card and says, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sung. Feel free to call me Adam." Adam apologizes for the sudden appearance, explaining that he's been difficult to track down. He adds that he even stopped by their office. Jinwoo, now thinking Adam might be the person Jinho mentioned who was looking for him, asks, "What business do you have with me?" Adam responds that he wants to share some information with Jinwoo. Jinwoo, intrigued, asks, "What kind of information?" Adam replies, "Perhaps no country or institution in the world could provide the information I'm about to share, except us." Jinwoo asks why they're willing to share this information with him, and Adam explains, "Because we benefit from sharing knowledge with special individuals like you." He further explains that they had planned to visit him for another reason, but after seeing the events of the Jeju Island raid, their deputy director wanted to meet him in person. Adam smiles and adds, "I'd say this is unprecedented, and our deputy director will explain the rest of the details. There's a car nearby if you'd like to meet with him." Jinwoo, now curious about the information Adam wants to share, gets into his car and thinks, "Information, huh?" He continues to ponder, still unsure if the details they wish to provide are reliable. He tells Adam that he will give it some thought and contact him later. Adam, smiling, comments, "How silly of me. I forgot that a good hand should never be hidden when striking a deal." He then adds, "An upgrader." Jinwoo is taken aback, and Adam explains, "An upgrader is an awakened being who can enhance the abilities of another awakened being. Have you heard of them?" As he asks Jinwoo, the scene shifts to a car as Adam and Jinwoo arrive at a building. Adam then introduces Jinwoo to Michael Connor, the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Michael shakes Jinwoo's hand and says, It's a pleasure to meet you. After the introductions are made, Adam announces that he will serve as their interpreter. Michael, being direct, slides a stack of immigration documents across the table and says, "It usually takes anywhere from 1 to 2 years for processing, but we're willing to make an exception for you." He adds, "Just say the word, and you'll be granted American citizenship in a second." Jinwoo, however, responds seriously, "I came here because Mr. White said you have some information to share with me. An awakened being who can enhance the abilities of another awakened being, an upgrader. Is it possible for a hunter's abilities to be upgraded?" Jinwoo asks. Michael smiles and replies, "Actually, the person who possesses such power is here right now." He looks to the back and instructs his staff, "Please tell Ms. Selner to come in." A woman, known as an upgrader, approaches Jinwoo. Mr. Connor introduces Norma Selner to Jinwoo, informing him that she is the only person in the world capable of enhancing the abilities of awakened beings. As Jinwoo observes Ms. Selner, he thinks to himself that she seems like a completely different type of awakened being. Michael then speaks up, telling Ms. Selner to explain to Jinwoo the extent of her powers. Ms. Selner began by addressing Jinwoo, acknowledging that he might be skeptical about what she was about to say. She added that everyone had the same doubtful look when they first heard it. However, she told him that once he experienced her power, he would beg for more. This made Mr. Connor call out to Ms. Selner as he saw her approach Jinwoo. Ms. Selner explained that Jinwoo might already be aware that every awakened individual has a limit to their strength, and no one can surpass that limit. An awakened being's rank would always remain the same unless they undergo a second awakening. This was common knowledge among hunters. Jinwoo then asked her, "But you can change that?" To which Ms. Selner responded, "Yes." She revealed that she had the power to help awakened beings break through their limitations. Through a process of 3 stages, she could lift their limitations. She added that she didn't even know what to call this power, but she was capable of performing a force reawakening, or in simple terms, she could bring out a person's true potential. Mr. Connor agreed with her and confirmed that everything she said was true. However, he pointed out that Ms. Selner would need a long period of rest after each use of her power. Because of this, she could only help 3 or 4 individuals per year. Jinwoo thought to himself that he would be one of the 3 or 4 people she would help. If what she said was true, then she must have an incredible ability. He then asked, "How effective is the process exactly?" Ms. Selner explained that the results would vary for each individual, but after going through all 3 stages, an individual would experience a strength increase of anywhere from 20% to 30%. Upon hearing this, Jinwoo was stunned. A 20 to 30% increase in strength seemed insane. He now understood why Hwang Dong-soo had decided to go to America, despite facing so much public criticism. Jinwoo thought to himself, who would turn down such an offer? Any hunter would jump at this opportunity. He then asked, "What if someone finds out about her powers?" Mr. Connor replied, explaining that this was exactly why she is under their care. They would ensure her safety while compensating her with a suitable salary. In return, Ms. Selner would help enhance the abilities of their selected hunters. Mr. Connor then introduced Ms. Selner to Jinwoo and told him that her power would be used on him as a gift. Jinwoo, still doubtful, asked, "You mean as an offer?" To which Mr. Connor clarified that once he became a hunter for the Federal Bureau, he would be given top priority and receive preferential benefits. Additionally, they would arrange meetings with the guild of his choice and help him sign the best contract. Ms. Selner slid the plate across the table and told Jinwoo that he didn't need to decide right away, as they were only easing him into the idea for now. Jinwoo asked, "Excuse me?" Ms. Selner reiterated that, as they said, this was a gift. Afterward, Mr. Connor asked for permission to lift his limits. Jinwoo asked, "For nothing in return?" Mr. Connor explained that he should think of it as a complimentary service. Jinwoo, remembering Ms. Selner's words that he would beg for more once he experienced it, realized she was confident in her results. Ms. Selner then asked Jinwoo to hold out his hand and look into her eyes closely. She told him this was the first step. Michael, watching the scene, thought to himself that Jinwoo had already taken the bait and was doing well, keeping his cool. However, once the first stage was complete, he believed Jinwoo would likely try to reach out to them. He also considered that if Jinwoo is an impatient type, he would likely sign the papers right away. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's hand began to glow as Ms. Selner held it. Mr. Connor reflected on Jinwoo's past achievements, how he had succeeded in the Jeju Island raid with powers that had never been seen before, and wondered what else Jinwoo could accomplish. As a green aura surrounded Jinwoo, the light in his eyes intensified. As the process continued, Ms. Selner's eyes began to glow, and she was enveloped by a powerful aura. Suddenly, it became clear that Ms. Selner had shifted to a place filled with darkness. A face appeared behind her, where only darkness remained. Gradually, a figure emerged from the shadows and slowly approached her. The figure came closer until it was right in front of her, staring at her with a terrifying light in its eyes. At this, Ms. Selner screamed, and the process was abruptly halted, shocking everyone in the room. Suddenly, some of their agents drew their guns and pointed them at Jinwoo, demanding to know what he had done to Ms. Selner. Mr. Connor angrily shouted at them, asking if they had lost their minds and if they didn't recognize who Jinwoo was. He called them morons and told them to go check on Ms. Selner if they were concerned. Mr. Connor bowed his head and apologized to Jinwoo for the agent's behavior, saying they had stepped out of line. Jinwoo, still shocked, replied, "It's all right." Angrily, Mr. Connor approached one of the agents and told him that if they had done something like this to Thomas Andre or Lu Ji Gang, they would all be dead by now. He coldly ordered, "Got it." The agent, terrified, quickly agreed. Mr. Connor then asked Ms. Selner what had happened, noticing that she was still trembling. He remarked that she was drenched in sweat and asked if she was feeling unwell. After that, Mr. Connor explained to Jinwoo that Ms. Selner was feeling under the weather and asked if it would be okay to reschedule the procedure for another time. Jinwoo agreed. Afterward, Mr. Connor instructed Adam to escort Jinwoo out of the room. Once Jinwoo left, Mr. Connor turned to Ms. Selner and asked what had happened. Her face was still filled with fear, and her hands trembled as she stuttered. "He's a king, and a powerful one at that." Mr. Connor was stunned by her words and asked if she meant Jinwoo was as strong as a national-level hunter. Ms. Selner shook her head, unable to explain further. She revealed that she hadn't experienced anything like this before. "He is a king," she repeated, "but not an ordinary one." She explained and said, "While I was looking at him, he was also looking back at me, an infinite darkness within him." Ms. Selner's words hung in the air. On top of that, there is no limit to his power. The chapter began with Jinho angrily clicking away at his mouse, frustrated by the comments he had seen online about Jinwoo. He muttered under his breath, feeling rage build up inside him as he thought about the trolls. He couldn't forgive anyone who spread hate about Jinwoo. Determined to act, he promised to sue every one of them. No matter how much they cried or begged, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. After a while, Jinho leaned back in his chair, exhausted, and sighed. He mentioned that he had taken down another group of haters trying to smear Jinwoo's name, feeling accomplished. Suddenly, Jinwoo appeared by his side, catching him off guard and thanking him for his hard work. Jinho thought to himself that Jinwoo always seemed to appear and disappear at will. Jinwoo then asked if everything was okay. "Yes, sir," Jinho replied. But then curiosity got the better of him, and he asked why Jinwoo looked so disheveled. Jinwoo explained that he had just returned from a gate and handed Jinho a bag filled with premium essence stones. He mentioned that Jinho needed a bit more money to start the guild. Jinho was taken aback by the sight of the bag. He quickly asked if Jinwoo had cleared a high-ranking gate. Jinwoo casually replied, confirming that he had. Jinho couldn't help but admire him. He noted that the essence stones would be more than enough to pay their employee. Jinwoo then asked which employee Jinho was referring to. Jinho reminded him of their earlier conversation about needing at least one more member for the guild. Jinwoo quickly recalled that they needed 3 people, a guild master, a vice guild master, and at least one more member. Jinwoo nodded in understanding and added that they only needed to fill the head count, but it would be better if they found a diligent person. After all, they weren't looking for a temporary employee. After a moment, Jinwoo asked if there was anything else to discuss. Jinho, now serious, replied that there was an urgent matter they needed to address. Jinwoo paused in surprise, curious about the nature of the matter. Jinho, trying to maintain a straight face, stated that it was something important, the guild's name. Jinwoo, lightly amused, responded that he had thought it was something more pressing. Suddenly, Jinho's voice grew louder as he emphasized that the guild's name was super-duper important. Jinho then suggested a few names. He proposed Sungyu Guild, combining their last names, or Yuzung Guild, claiming it had a nice ring to it. However, he added that he couldn't have his name come before Jinwoo's. He also suggested combining the last two syllables of their first names to form Woho Guild, or perhaps Jinjin Guild, claiming it didn't sound too bad either. Jinwoo listened quietly before suggesting Solo Player Guild, explaining that since he mostly hunted solo, the name fit well. Jinho, momentarily stunned, wondered if Jinwoo was joking. For a moment, he had thought Jinwoo was good at everything, but now he wasn't so sure, thinking maybe Jinwoo was just as human as the rest of them after all. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Jinho opened it, and was met by a voice asking if this was the office of Mr. Sung Jinwoo. Jinho replied affirmatively, but his sentence was cut short when he saw who was standing at the door. The person was none other than Hunter Cha Hae-in. Jinwoo, equally surprised, asked what brought her here. She slowly answered that she had come to sign up for the guild. However, Jinwoo repeated his question, still confused. She clarified that she was indeed there to join their guild. Jinwoo, now even more confused, asked if Mr. Go had told her about this. Hae-in looked puzzled and said no, asking why he would be involved. Jinwoo continued, wondering aloud if Mr. Choi had kicked her out of the Hunters Guild. She quickly denied it, stating that she hadn't been kicked out. Jinwoo then asked why she wanted to join the Solo Player Guild. Hae-in seemed surprised, confirming if their guild was really called the Solo Player Guild. Jinwoo replied affirmatively, asking if there was a problem with the name. He explained that the name had been agreed upon by him and his vice guild master. Jinho, overhearing the conversation, asked Jinwoo if he was serious about the name, adding that he wondered whether his opinion even mattered to him. Jinwoo seemed puzzled but explained that, since he hadn't said anything, he had taken that as a sign of approval. Jinho, taken aback by Jinwoo's response, was left in stunned silence. In that moment, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel that the situation was clouding his judgment. As he turned to Hae-in, he noticed her heart was racing, her breathing uneven, and she was avoiding his gaze. She was clearly trying to keep her composure, but Jinwoo felt certain that she wasn't fooling him. In his mind, he wondered why she seemed so eager to join his guild. Jinwoo, still trying to understand the situation, remarked that it had been 2 years since she became an awakened hunter. He was pretty sure she was still under contract with the Hunters Guild. Hae-in quickly responded that she had enough money to pay the penalty for breaching the contract. Jinwoo thought about this for a moment, wondering why she was willing to pay the penalty. He shook his head, saying that they couldn't afford to pay in advance, especially not for someone of her caliber. Hae-in shrugged and said it didn't matter, she didn't need an advance. Jinwoo then asked, still puzzled, why she would go to such lengths to join his guild when she wouldn't gain anything from it. Hae-in hesitated, unsure how to explain her true feelings. She didn't want Jinwoo to think she was crazy. She recalled how Jinwoo had caught her attention with his unique scent when they first met. Unlike other hunters, he didn't give off that foul odor. She remembered watching him fight during the battle with Kargalgan and seeing just how powerful he was. Her thoughts drifted to the time when she saw him ruin Lee Min-sung's press conference and the massive hate he received online. Despite being an S-rank hunter, Jinwoo didn't radiate any negative energy. Hae-in quickly shook her head, trying to stop thinking about him. The Jeju Island raid was approaching, and she had no time to waste. Still, she couldn't help but think, he stands out like a burst of color in a grayscale world. She couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. The memories from the Jeju Island raid came rushing back. She had felt terrified when the Ant King appeared, and the fear of death took over. But then, she had woken up, finding Chairman Go beside her. He had asked if she was all right, and as she looked around, she had asked where they were. Chairman Go had replied that they were on a helicopter, just landing on top of the Hunters Association building. He'd also mentioned that they needed to get her to the hospital. Hae-in suddenly stopped and asked, her voice filled with hope, if Jinwoo had come to their aid. Chairman Go had nodded, and Hae-in couldn't help but smile, her cheeks reddening. She thought to herself, I knew it wasn't a dream. She realized she had been close to death during that raid, and it made her wonder what would happen if she ever faced a situation she couldn't escape. As the flashbacks faded, Hae-in found herself sitting in the guild office with Jinwoo, her thoughts still focused on him. She wanted to say the words, I want you by my side until my last breath, but quickly dismissed the idea, feeling too embarrassed. Jinwoo, noticing her discomfort, wondered if there was something she wanted to say. Haein blushed, unable to speak. Her face reddened even further as she looked down. Jinwoo thought to himself that maybe she was hiding something, or perhaps she was just embarrassed. He then asked if she wasn't going to answer his questions. Finally, Haein clenched her fists and said that she wanted to live a comfortable life. She looked at him seriously and asked if that was wrong. Jinwoo, taken aback, responded that it wasn't. Jinho whispered to Jinwoo that it seemed like Haein had been overworked by the Hunters Guild. Jinwoo, now understanding more, thought about how young Haein was, only 22 or 23 years old, and yet the burden of being an S-rank hunter had weighed heavily on her. She had suffered a serious injury during the Jeju Island raid, and Jinwoo couldn't help but feel sorry for her. But, Jinwoo said, there is actually an entrance test you need to pass in order to join the guild. Haein looked shocked, mentioning that there was no mention of a test in the recruitment post. Jinwoo explained that it was a new regulation, and the vice guild master must have made a mistake. He then turned to Jinho and instructed him to go downstairs and buy some snacks for their guest. As Jinho left, Haein asked what kind of test it was. Jinwoo, still shocked by her reaction, explained that she would need to defeat one of his summoned beasts. Haein, clearly confident, asked if that was all, implying that Jinwoo was underestimating her. Jinwoo smiled and reassured her that he would pick the strongest one for her. The chapter ended with Haein standing tall, confidently agreeing to the challenge. The chapter began with Haein standing up and asking Jinwoo when the entrance exam he mentioned would take place. Jinwoo replied that it was happening today and asked if the location was okay, suggesting the gymnasium of the Hunters Association. Jinwoo suddenly realized that, thinking it over, the gymnasium was a bit far from their guild office. He also thought it would be a great opportunity to test whether he could use his shadow exchange skill with another person. As Haein was about to leave the room, Jinwoo quickly stopped her, saying they wouldn't go that way. Haein turned around, confused, and asked, "Sorry?" Jinwoo then assured her there was an easier way, and all she needed to do was stay close to him. He asked if that was okay and reached out to her, pulling her closer as he activated his shadow exchange skill. As the scene progressed, Haein was seen in Jinwoo's arms, her face filled with disbelief at the situation. Slowly, they were enveloped by shadows, and as they disappeared, Jinho arrived with food, saying they should eat first. But he was startled to find only Jinwoo's shadow orc, who promptly snatched the food from Jinho's hands and devoured it in one bite. The scene then shifted to the gymnasium, where Jinwoo and Haein had successfully arrived using his shadow exchange skill. Haein, still in disbelief, asked how it was even possible. Jinwoo thought to himself that he had suspected it all along, that his shadow exchange skill worked like a gate, and the fact that it allowed him to travel with another person proved it. The entrance would form below them, and the exit would appear at the designated destination, which was based on the location of his shadow soldiers. Despite the 3-hour cooldown, he thought it was crazy that the skill worked almost like a gate. Jinwoo also realized that, if he wanted to, he could travel to the other side of the world with it. While Haein was still stunned, Jinwoo remarked that they were about to begin. She then turned to him and suddenly remembered that she hadn't brought her weapon. Jinwoo jokingly asked if she meant the pickaxe. Haein blushed, recalling that Jinwoo had seen her bring a pickaxe before. She quickly clarified that it wasn't her weapon, to which Jinwoo smiled, admitting he was just teasing her. Haein, still embarrassed, assured him she would be fine, as there was a weapon she could borrow from the storage room. She scanned her card, and the door opened to reveal a large array of weapons. She explained that this gym was designed for hunters, so there were plenty of weapons available for training. Though they weren't the best, they were sufficient for what she needed. Haein picked out a long sword, saying she was ready. Jinwoo asked if she was sure about her choice, since she hadn't had much time to get used to it. Haein replied that it didn't matter what weapon she used, because in reality, magic beasts didn't care whether someone was fully prepared for battle or not. Jinwoo silently agreed with her assessment. He also realized that, based on her willingness to prove herself, if he summoned an ordinary soldier, she would tear it apart with ease. Jinwoo then called upon Igris, his best swordsman among his shadow soldiers. Haein asked how the winner would be decided, and Jinwoo replied that the battle would continue until she either destroyed his summoned beast or surrendered. Jinwoo was contemplating summoning his strongest soldier, Beru, but he hesitated, knowing that letting her fight Beru would be too traumatic for her. Meanwhile, Igris could be seen, ready for battle. Jinwoo decided it was time to begin. Haein, holding her sword, exuded a powerful aura. Jinwoo, suddenly realizing that she didn't care which weapon she used, asked Haein if she could turn around for a second. She agreed, and Jinwoo took the opportunity to pull out a sword from his inventory, which he then handed over to Igris. With everything in place, Jinwoo declared that the test could begin. Haein nodded in agreement, and the battle commenced. Igris, now armed with the Demon King's longsword, charged forward, swiftly unleashing a slash that created an explosion, accompanied by a violent thunderstorm. Haein dodged with ease. Seeing this, Jinwoo thought to himself that, just as he had expected, Haein was incredibly fast. If an ordinary person had been grazed by Igris, they would have died. Haein retaliated with her own slash, which Igris blocked with his sword. The scene shifted to Chairman Go's office, located near the gym. He sensed something unusual and looked toward the gym, wondering if anyone had reserved it for today. He immediately called his staff and instructed them to link the internal CCTV feed to his room. On his monitor, Chairman Go saw Jinwoo and Haein in the gym, and he was puzzled, wondering to himself, when did the two of them? He then recalled a conversation with Haein during the Jeju Island raid, when she had asked if Jinwoo had helped them. He remembered the smile on Haein's face when she learned that Jinwoo had arrived. Chairman Go realized that he had been slow to catch on. He smiled to himself and then instructed his staff to turn off all the security cameras in the gymnasium. When his staff questioned him, he simply said, "Just write today off as an inspection day." His staff quickly complied. Chairman Go leaned back in his chair, amused by the situation, but the force of the battle caused a flag displayed behind him to fall. He muttered, "Ah, youth." The scene then returned to the gym, where Jinwoo stood stunned, watching as Igris was defeated. Haein, still gripping her sword and exuding a powerful aura, turned to Jinwoo and asked, "Are you sure that Igris is your strongest?" She then insisted, urging Jinwoo to summon his strongest soldier. Jinwoo, now serious, warned her that she could get hurt, but Haein, undeterred, remained determined. "I don't care," she said with resolve. "I want a rematch anyway." Jinwoo, surprised, realized that Haein knew about Beru. She explained that she had seen the beast in person and had also watched the footage. Jinwoo didn't respond, but simply called Beru's name to summon him. Haein was ready, and the scene ended with Beru's shadow beginning to emerge. Jinwoo once again asked Haein if she was sure she wanted to continue, but she was undeterred. The powerful aura of Beru's shadow filled the room, signaling the beginning of the next phase of their battle. The chapter began with Jinwoo summoning Beru to fight against Haein. Jinwoo thought to himself that his extracted soldiers had become weaker compared to when they were alive. However, even with this, Beru was created for the purpose of killing hunters, and he was born to be a weapon. Jinwoo muttered, "If he goes all out against Cha Haein, her chances of winning will be." He was interrupted when Beru, addressing Jinwoo as "my king," asked what he should do with this person. Jinwoo ordered Beru to defeat Haein, but to ensure she wasn't harmed. Beru immediately obeyed. A powerful roar erupted from Beru, causing the lights in the gymnasium to shatter. The shockwave reached Haein, who couldn't believe Jinwoo had actually fought this beast. Beru unsheathed his sharp claws, and Jinwoo quickly told him to put them away, warning that he wouldn't make his life easy if he hurt Haein. Beru complied, retracting his claws. Haein saw an opening in that moment and decided to act. Suddenly, Beru appeared behind her, which shocked Haein. She thought to herself that he had used the same move as during the Jeju Island raid. But unlike before, she had anticipated it and countered with a swift slash, exclaiming, "You think I'm going to fall for the same trick twice?" Despite Haein's efforts, Beru easily blocked and grabbed her sword attack with his hand, then quickly released it. In his mind, Beru understood that his king had given him a command to defeat Haein without causing any harm. He intended to show how strong he was, hoping it would break her will to fight. A simple task indeed, he thought. Haein launched multiple slashes, but Beru avoided each one effortlessly. She then attempted a quick stab, but once again, Beru dodged it. Haein, realizing how easily Beru was evading her attacks, became startled. She couldn't believe he was dodging her moves even without using his feet. Before she could react, Beru suddenly appeared right in front of her, unleashing a terrifying roar. The force of it pushed Haein back, and she barely managed to stop herself from being sent flying by stabbing her sword into the floor to anchor herself. Jinwoo, watching from the sidelines, concluded that the match's outcome had already been decided. He asked Haein if she was satisfied, to which Haein replied, "Not yet. I still have more fight left in me." Her determination was evident in her eyes as she locked her gaze with Jinwoo, still gripping her sword tightly. Jinwoo was taken aback by her answer. He hadn't expected Haein to be reckless enough to continue the fight, despite realizing the difference in their strength. Jinwoo reflected that Beru was different from his other shadow soldiers. While he possessed intellect, Beru was a killing machine at heart. Even now, Jinwoo could sense that Beru was suppressing his overwhelming desire to kill. Jinwoo hoped that Haein wasn't making the wrong call. After all, a single glance or an instinctive warning was enough for someone like Beru to recognize whether a person was prey or not. "How dare you?" Beru thought to himself, his predatory instincts kicking in. He believed the prey standing before him could not be tolerated. Without warning, he lunged at Haein, his claws outstretched. Haein managed to dodge the attack, but Beru's claws left deep slashes in the floor. She quickly dashed away, while Beru staring at her. She activated sword dance skill. Her stance changed, and a powerful aura surrounded her sword. Haein unleashed a flurry of rapid slashes. However, Beru easily grabbed her sword and crushed it effortlessly in front of her. Haein, realizing this was her only chance, activated her Sword of Light skill. Her sword, which Beru had crushed, now glowed with a piercing aura. With one swift strike, she stabbed Beru in the chest. Jinwoo, watching in shock, muttered, "No." For a brief moment, a quick command resurfaced in Beru's mind, a command given to him by his queen upon his birth. It was an instinct he couldn't suppress. The command was simple: annihilate the enemy. Beru's eyes turned red, and all that filled his mind was that the woman in front of him was his enemy. In a split second, he exploded in rage, extending his claws to attack Haein. Jinwoo screamed at Beru to stop, but it was too late. Beru's attack was already in motion. Haein braced herself, and in the next moment, a powerful explosion rang out. When the smoke cleared, it was revealed that Jinwoo had caught Beru's claw with his own hand, stopping the attack. Haein, now standing in front of Jinwoo, was stunned by what had just happened. Jinwoo looked at Beru with an expression of authority. "I told you to stop," he said coldly. He was holding Beru's claw in his hand and stepping on the other claw to restrain him. Haein, still in shock, sat down, overwhelmed by the events. Jinwoo turned to Haein and asked, "Are you okay?" Haein responded softly, "Yes." Meanwhile, Beru knelt before Jinwoo, begging for mercy. "My king, please have mercy." Jinwoo sighed deeply and then asked Haein, his voice laced with concern, "Why are you pushing yourself so hard? You don't need to go this far just to join our guild." Haein didn't answer immediately, but Jinwoo continued, "This is just a test. For a nameless guild, someone like you shouldn't risk your life over something like this. It's not worth it." Jinwoo repeated his question, "So why are you going to such lengths?" Haein bowed her head, remaining silent. Jinwoo asked again calmly, "Don't you have anything to say?" Jinwoo's thoughts turned inward as he wondered what Haein's true intentions were. Then, almost as an afterthought, he asked, "Are you, perhaps, interested in me?" Haein's eyes widened in shock when she heard this. She stammered, "What?" and she struggled to find words. When she didn't answer, Jinwoo couldn't make sense of her silence. But then, to his surprise, Haein softly spoke, "Yes, I think so." As the chapter ended, Haein looked at Jinwoo, her face flushed with a deep blush. The chapter begins at the Federal Bureau of Hunters Association office, where Michael Connor and Norma Selner are seen apologizing to David Brennan. Mr. Brennan, however, responds that he did not call them to listen to their apologies and that he only wanted to know what had happened. Michael then speaks, mentioning that based on Ms. Selner's observations, Sung Jinwoo is one of the kings. Mr. Brennan is taken aback by this statement and asks if they mean to say that Sung Jinwoo is as powerful as a national-level hunter. Ms. Selner responds, saying she will explain. She starts her explanation by saying that all awakened beings draw their power from a place called the other side, and she can sense the connection between them. Occasionally, the force from the other side becomes so intense that some awakened individuals appear as streaks of blinding light. These individuals are usually referred to as kings. However, in Jinwoo's case, she could not sense any connection. When she looked into his eyes, the darkness within him stared back at her. She shudders as she recalls this and says, "He was darkness itself." Upon hearing this, Mr. Brennan pauses and asks if she's implying that Sung Jinwoo is an evil being. Ms. Selner clarifies that she is not trying to label him as good or evil. She is merely describing the source of his powers. She explains that his strength does not come from any external connection, meaning the usual limitations of the connection do not apply to him. Michael added and says, "There's no limit to his powers." Ms. Selner nods in agreement. Mr. Brennan stands up and thanks Ms. Selner for her time. Michael then asks where Mr. Brennan is going. Mr. Brennan answers that he is heading to basement level 24 and invites Michael to join him. As they descend in the elevator, they continue their conversation. Mr. Brennan mentions that if they cannot use Ms. Selner's abilities to recruit Jinwoo, they will have to find another way. He asks Michael if he remembers the first S-rank gate that opened. Michael replies that, of course, saying how could he forget the most catastrophic dungeon break in history? The entire West Coast was devastated, and the US had to recruit the world's strongest hunters by offering a huge reward. Out of all those hunters, only 5 survived the raid. Each one was given authority equal to a nation, which birthed the title of national-level hunters. He recalls Kamish the Dragon, also known as the Inextinguishable Flame, a magical beast that single-handedly obliterated hundreds of top-ranking hunters. As they near the basement, Mr. Brennan suddenly speaks up, asking if Michael would believe him if he said there was a silver lining to that tragedy. Michael, confused, asks what he means. Mr. Brennan responds, "You bet I am," as he opens the door to the basement. A cloud of smoke billows out as the door opens, and Mr. Brennan says, "See for yourself." Inside the room is a runed stone, which had been found at the corpse of Kamish. Mr. Brennan explains that it has been 8 years since the Kamish raid, and there has yet to be a mage-class national-level hunter. This runed stone has been waiting in the cold basement for its rightful owner to arrive. He adds that Kamish will bestow a valuable gift upon the country, as seen in the enormous dragon bones. Meanwhile, at Jinwoo's home, he stands in front of a mirror, thinking about how, since his reawakening, he has grown taller and more fit. But he questions whether he is truly all that now. He's pretty sure his looks are still just average. He wonders if this change is due to the buffs he gained from the will to recover, which states that any damage to his body will be restored. This might explain why his skin has cleared up as well. Suddenly, he calls for his sister, Gina, and asks her to rate him. Gina, confused, asks, "In terms of what?" Jinwoo replies, "In terms of attractiveness." Gina asks where he got this sudden confidence from and says he looks like a bum, in her opinion. Annoyed, Jinwoo grabs her head and Gina kicks him away. Jinwoo snaps back, telling her that if she keeps kicking, she'll break her leg. He reminds her that he has an S-rank hunter's body now. Jinwoo, in a playful mood, questions how someone like Gina could even get into school. Gina, not missing a beat, counters, asking if Jinwoo is serious because she's literally at the top of their class. Jinwoo, however, quickly retorts that those were only mock exams. Afterward, Jinwoo shares that he plans to form a guild. Gina asks if that means he will be the big boss. He answers that, if everything goes well, that's the plan. Meanwhile, Gina chats with Han Song-yi and tells her that her brother is starting to lose his mind, thinking he's attractive. Jinwoo, curious, asks Gina what she thinks about the name Solo Player Guild. Gina, surprised, asks if he's joking and why he would think that's a good name. Jinwoo questions whether it's weird, but Gina explains that he summons dark soldiers with his abilities, so technically he isn't a solo player. Jinwoo admits that she has a point and asks her what name she would suggest. Gina suggests, how about Ahjin Guild? She explains that means I, and Jin means to go forward in Chinese characters. She adds that she chose this name because it's her name backwards. Jinwoo considers the suggestion and says, "Not too bad, actually." The scene shifts to Haeun's house, where she is shouting in her room, unable to sleep. She keeps thinking about how she confessed her feelings to Jinwoo, saying, "I think so." In her mind, it felt like she had admitted that she liked him, and she can't stop thinking about it. She remembers his response, that joining his guild was not the best option, and asks if there is a better way. Suddenly, she exclaims in frustration, thinking that Jinwoo might think she's crazy. She jumps up, telling herself that, of course, she would be interested in him because he saved her life. She tries to reassure herself, but then quickly covers her face with a pillow, realizing everything she said feels completely wrong. She starts to think about how she survived because of Min Byung-goo's abilities. Then a memory resurfaces. She recalls seeing her soul and hearing a voice. She recalls the image of Hunter Min Byung-goo pulling her to safety and is pleading words for her to tell Jinwoo to be careful of the power within him. The chapter ends with Haeun suddenly rising from her bed, overwhelmed as she recalls the memory of Byung-goo's words and the images that flooded her mind. Chapter 116 begins at the Knights Guild office, where Yoontae informs Jong-soo about a new gate that appeared the day before. Yoontae mentions that it would be difficult to get an entry permit for this gate, as the Hunter Association has classified it as a high-ranking gate. Jong-soo asks if it is S-rank, but Yoontae replies that it is not, though it is a top-tier A-rank gate. Jong-soo remarks that it's a real headache, and they could end up dying if they're not careful. Yoontae adds that if the gate were S-rank, giving up would be the obvious choice. However, he also points out that they don't have enough manpower to form a strike squad for an A-rank gate. Despite this, Yoontae continues, saying that since they are one of the 5 major guilds in the country, people might start talking if they fail to clear the gate. Jong-soo responds that most people don't understand the difference between hunters' rank, treating them as if they're all the same. Yoontae then mentions that the members of the Fame Guild would likely jump at the opportunity if they pass on clearing this gate. Jong-soo's eyes twitch at the mention of the Fame Guild, and he asks Yoontae if he's suggesting they spoon-feed Dongwook a gate that spawned right in their own backyard. Yoontae panics at the question and clarifies that he just wanted to inform Jong-soo. Jong-soo then mentions that, in terms of both numbers and capability, their guild's A-rank hunters are no weaker than those from other major guilds. The problem, however, is that they do not have any S-rank hunters, which sets them back compared to others. A voice suddenly suggests forming an alliance with another guild. Jong-soo immediately dismisses the idea, saying that no guild would agree to ally with them, as it would be obvious they were asking for help, implying they are not capable of clearing the gate on their own. The suggestion comes from one of their guild members, an A-rank healer named Jung Yerim, who counters by asking if they could approach an individual instead of another guild. Jong-soo wonders what difference an individual could make for such a top-tier A-rank gate, and he starts to think. Yerim, with a smile, suggests, "You know who I'm talking about, right?" Jong-soo immediately realizes she means Sung Jinwoo. Jong-soo acknowledges that while creating an alliance with another guild might give them a bad reputation, joining forces with Jinwoo would earn them public recognition. It would also give them a much better chance of safely clearing the gate. Jong-soo then asks if Yoontae has any information about Jinwoo. Yoontae replies that the last he heard, Jinwoo cleared a gate that had appeared in the middle of the highway not too long ago. However, aside from that, he has been keeping a low profile. Yoontae then asks if Jong-soo wants him to try and get Jinwoo's contact information. Jong-soo dismisses the idea, saying it would be foolish to handle something this important over the phone. He suggests they should go and meet Jinwoo in person. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo's guild office, where he is speaking with Jinho. Jinwoo asks what Jinho thinks of the name Ahjin for their guild. Jinho happily agrees, calling it wonderful, and immediately suggests they make it official. In Jinho's thoughts, he muses that as long as it's not called Solo Player Guild, anything will do. Jinwoo agrees, and mentions that the next thing they need to do is find another member. Jinho asks what happened to Ms. Haeun the day before. Jinwoo replies that he doesn't think Haeun is a good fit for their guild, and she's not what he's looking for. Jinho, puzzled, wonders why, considering Ms. Haeun is an S-rank, young, has an impressive performance record, and even has good looks. He asks Jinwoo what exactly he is looking for. Jinwoo responds that he wants someone with a hunter license who has no interest in joining a guild but is trustworthy. Jinho ponders for a moment before suggesting a few names. Just then, there's a knock at the door. Jinwoo opens it, thinking it might be Haein again, but to his surprise, it is the Knights Guild members, led by Guild Master Jongsu. Jinwoo and Jinho are stunned by their unexpected visit. The scene transitions to Jinwoo sitting at the table, facing Jongsu, with Yoontae and Yerim standing behind him. Jongsu shows Jinwoo a video of a massive dungeon gate and explains that, although the size of the gate may not be directly proportional to its actual danger, the amount of mana it is emitting is gargantuan. Jinwoo then asks if the Hunter Association has classified it as an S-rank gate. Jongsu responds, "No, but it's just shy of being immeasurable. It's the largest gate ever to appear in Busan." Jinwoo thinks for a moment when he hears Busan and wonders if he might meet Juhee and treat her to sashimi. Jongsu continues, explaining that the Hunter Association has refused to give them an entry permit because they don't have an S-rank hunter in their guild. The association believes the gate is too risky for them. However, if Jinwoo joins their strike squad, they are confident the association will issue them a permit. They also promise to compensate him generously. While Jinwoo and Jongsu are talking, Yerim wonders if Jinwoo would give her his autograph if she asked. Jongsu adds that in major guilds, an S-rank hunter typically receives 10% of the profits, but they are willing to offer Jinwoo 20%. Jinwoo counters, suggesting they make it 50-50. Jongsu is taken aback, asking, "Excuse me?" Jinwoo explains that he will only team up with them if they treat him as a guild, not as an individual hunter. He adds that he is currently in the process of founding a guild called Ahjin. Jongsu sweats a little and asks if Jinwoo would settle for 40-60. Jinwoo coolly responds that he is not trying to negotiate with him right now. Jongsu realizes that while Jinwoo may look young, he is no pushover. After a brief pause, Jongsu agrees to the 50-50 arrangement. However, he adds one condition. In return, he asks Jinwoo to defeat the dungeon boss. Jinwoo agrees, and they shake hands. Jongsu states that since it has been a while since the gate was discovered, they need to start the raid by tomorrow at the latest. He offers to give Jinwoo a ride to Busan, asking if he wants to come with them now. Jinwoo replies that he has plans for the night, but promises not to be late and will meet them tomorrow. As he speaks, his shadow seems to twitch, which Yoontae notices. Yoontae says to Jongsu, "I'm sure I just saw Jinwoo's shadow move." Jongsu dismisses it, asking, "Are you drunk, Yoontae?" Jinwoo's phone suddenly buzzes. He looks at it, wondering who's calling. Excusing himself, he steps outside to answer the call. It turns out to be his mother, who has just bought a phone and immediately called him to hear his voice. She asks if he's been busy. Jinwoo replies that he hasn't. He thinks to himself, "Who else was I expecting it to be?" After that, he invites his mother to dinner, and she happily agrees, saying, "Okay, I'd love that." The scene shifts to the next day, where a large dungeon gate at Gwangali Beach in Busan is visible. The Knights Guild members, led by Jongsu, have already arrived. Jongsu looks at his phone, waiting for Jinwoo. He mutters to himself, "Maybe we should have forced Jinwoo to come with us yesterday," adding, "I just hope he's not late." After that, Jongsu looks at the time and curses under his breath, realizing they need to enter in 5 minutes. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo's house, where he's just leaving. As he looks at the dark clouds in the sky, he wonders if Gina brought an umbrella. He thinks about heading to the Knights Guild's dungeon and activates his shadow exchange skill. The scene transitions to Gina's school, where 3 boys are walking down the hallway discussing their teacher. One complains about how they are being used as free labor, while another agrees. One of them then asks why their art teacher is dumping all the work on them. Before they enter, one asks how many plaster busts they need to get. The others say they will split into 6 groups, so probably 1 each. One of them suggests carrying 4 at once to avoid making 2 trips. As they open the door, they are greeted by a thick cloud of dust. One wonders when the room was last cleaned, and other guesses that it hasn't been used all semester. They stop in their tracks when they notice something strange in the classroom, a gate. One of them boasts as he approaches it, saying it's safe because it's closed and that hunters are the only ones who can enter and nothing can come out. Plus, it will take about a week for the gate to open. The others discuss in the back, and one of them asks why the room had been neglected all semester, adding that the fact they only just found it must mean. Their conversation abruptly stops when they hear a loud crack coming from the gate. Suddenly, a massive hand violently grabs one of them by the head, lifting him up. The two remaining students scream in horror as they watch a monstrous face emerge from the gate, its terrifying features becoming clear as it looms over them. The chapter ends with blood splattering on the floor as the enormous green hand crushes the student's face. The chapter began with a gruesome scene, 3 students being killed by dungeon monsters at the front of the gate. As the monsters emerged from the gate, it was explained that some beings are naturally born predators. While they may lack intelligence, they far exceed humans in their ability to track and hunt down prey. These predators were overjoyed by the scent of flesh and blood. However, because they were in charge of reconnaissance, they had suppressed their instincts and focused on their mission. For an entire week, they had stayed hidden in the darkness, not hunting, but searching for prey. This suppression of their instincts had activated their 6th sense. One of the monsters spoke, saying that this place was teeming with prey. The level they were on was just one of many, and the structure they were in seemed as complex as a castle. The monster told his companion that he would go hunt first, while ordering the other to call for their 4 remaining brothers. The monster then destroyed the door to exit, declaring that their real hunt would begin after they slaughtered the humans inside the castle and fortified their position. He said he would clear the area first. As he walked down the hallway, he encountered a group of students. Among them, a male student was seen handing a drink to a female student. However, their moment was abruptly interrupted when a monster leaped in front of them, its axe raised, ready to strike. The scene then shifted to Busan, where a large gate stood, with the Knights Guild hunters preparing for the upcoming mission. Jinwoo had just arrived and was gazing at the massive gate, thinking that it was even larger than he had imagined in real life. He noticed that both the hauling and mining teams were already positioned on either side, while the strike squad was made up of 13 A-rank hunters and 20 B-rank hunters. Jinwoo thought that, while they had a lot of A-rank hunters, this was to be expected, as they were the guild with the highest number of A-rank hunters under their command. While Jinwoo was lost in thought, he was suddenly startled when a group of Knights Guild hunters approached him. They were in awe upon seeing him. One of them commented on how incredible he had been during the Jeju Island raid. Another asked how he had been able to summon the Dark Soldiers, wondering if they should be called summoned beasts. A female hunter then asked if he was going to lead the raid. Before Jinwoo could answer, a female hunter stepped forward and said not to disturb Mr. Sung Jinwoo. She introduced herself as Jung Yerim, the main healer of the Knights Guild Elite Strike Squad. She suggested that since Jinwoo was the leader and she was the main healer, they should all get along. When Jinwoo saw Jongsu, he asked him if he hadn't already told them. Jongsu replied that he was about to announce it now. He then declared that he would be leading today's raid. The hunters' faces fell in disappointment. A female hunter even asked if Jongsu was leading again, despite Jinwoo being there. Jongsu explained that Jinwoo would be in charge of the backline to ensure their safety. One of the members asked if they really needed someone to protect them. Smiling, turned to Jinwoo and asked if he thought their elite strike squad looked weak, then looked to his companions to see if they agreed with his question. The hunter next to him was taken aback by the remark. Jongsu explained that their hunters were pretty gutsy. He added that sometimes they spoke out of line, but that was just how things were done around their guild. Afterward, Jongsu checked his phone and announced that they should get going now. "Come on, everyone, it's time. Let's get this raid started," he exclaimed, and they all began to enter the massive dungeon gate. The scene then shifted to the Hunter Association, where an emergency call came through. The caller, a female student, nervously asked if she had reached the Hunter Association. The female agent who answered confirmed that she had and asked how she could help. The student, too frightened to speak clearly, explained that she was at school and there were monsters outside. The staff member was shocked by what she heard and immediately thought of the possibility of a dungeon break. The female agent then asked where the student was, and she replied that she was hiding in the bathroom. She mentioned that her friend was with her, but her friend had already been killed. The female student's voice trembled as she cried in fear. The female agent then asked how many monsters were outside and if they were nearby. The student replied that she couldn't say for sure, but she could hear a lot of screaming. Terrified, she asked if she was going to die. The agent reassured her to stay calm and listen carefully. She said their hunters were already on the way and that they wouldn't give up on her. "So you need to stay calm no matter what," she instructed. "Do you understand?" The student, slightly reassured, asked if this meant she could survive. The agent then asked what kind of magic beasts the monsters outside were. The student responded that she had seen them on TV but couldn't remember their name. The agent asked if she could describe their appearance. The student said they had human bodies, but their faces were hideous, with green skin. Upon hearing this, the staff member's eyes widened in horror, and she asked, "Could it be? Are they orcs?" The student confirmed, saying she believed they were orcs. Meanwhile, one of the monsters holding an axe, covered in blood, could be seen outside. The staff member panicked and shouted that the student needed to leave immediately, as orcs could smell her. But before she could finish, a scream echoed from the student, and the staff member heard the phone fall. The last thing she heard was the student's desperate cry, "Help me! Please help me!" The scene then shifted to another part of the school, where students were running in panic, their screams filling the air as they saw the monsters. Some had managed to escape through the gate, but others were still trapped inside. The scene cut to two orcs, one of whom said he couldn't believe half of their prey had gotten away. The other orc reassured him that it was fine, there were still plenty left. They decided to climb to another floor to continue hunting. In the hallway, they found no students, as they were all hiding inside classrooms, barricading doors with stacked chairs and tables to keep the orcs out. The male students stood ready, prepared to fight if the orcs managed to get through. Fear was evident on their faces. Suddenly, the barricades flew across the room with a tremendous impact, and the students screamed in terror as an orc with a sword entered the classroom. One student tried to escape through another door, but ran straight into another orc, who slashed him without hesitation. The two orcs then conversed, with one calling the other chief. He said that he could sense a human with mana. The orc chief ordered that this human must be killed first. The chapter ended with Gina and Songyi revealed to be among the students hiding inside the classroom, their faces filled with fear. Gina, her eyes closed, thought of Jinwoo's name, hoping he would come to their rescue. The scene begins at Gina's school, where Songyi is seen preparing to confront a pair of orcs. Gina tries to stop her, urging her not to engage them. However, Songyi boldly declares that even though she's only an E rank, she's still an awakened being. The two orcs observe the girls with suspicion. One of them asks if the girl confronting them is the human with mana they sensed earlier. The other orc replies, "No, there's someone stronger," as his gaze shifts to Gina, noticing the powerful mana emanating from her. Suddenly, one of the orcs charges at them with his axe raised high, shouting that the scent he's following is coming from the girl, and that she needs to die. Gina and Songyi brace for impact, but just before it lands, Gina realizes something strange. Nothing hits them. As she opens her eyes, she sees a massive shadow orc standing in front of them, having blocked the attack. Gina is left speechless, wondering in awe if Jinwoo is the one who sent this creature. The shadow orc throws a devastating punch at the dungeon orc, sending it flying into the ceiling and crashing outside. The remaining orc looks on in shock as two more shadow orcs appear, standing protectively in front of Gina and Songyi. The scene shifts to Busan, where Jinwoo and the Knights Guild have just entered a dungeon. Jiangsu suddenly shouts in alarm, identifying their enemy, a twin-headed ogre. He warns everyone to stay alert as the enormous dungeon monster looms before them. As the ogre charges forward, Jiangsu activates a skill. Mana flares from his hands as he braces himself. He positions both arms in front of him like a shield, just as the ogre's attack collides with the barrier he created. Jiangsu calls out to Yuntae, who readies his weapon and dashes forward with lightning speed. In a flash, he slashes across the ogre's eyes, shouting to his teammates that they need to deal as much damage as possible. The ogres scream in pain. The other hunters join the fray. A female hunter swings her axe, slashing one of the ogres, while a male hunter strikes the other with his sword. Meanwhile, their mages unleash a flurry of fire and electric spells. The combined assault scorches the ogres, ultimately bringing them down. Once the ogres are defeated, Jiangsu orders everyone to regroup, noting that things aren't going as smoothly as expected. He had thought the raid would be easy, but he hadn't anticipated facing such a tough boss right at the start. He then turns to Jinwoo and asks if he knows the other name for twin-headed ogres. Jinwoo replies seriously, "Gravekeepers." "That's right," Jiangsu says, adding that while gravekeepers are manageable as dungeon bosses, encountering them at the dungeon entrance often means one thing: an army of the undead is nearby. Sure enough, a horde of undead begins approaching. Yoontae then turns to Jiangsu, asking what they should do and whether they should attack. As the hunters observe the undead, they quickly notice something odd. The undead seem to be staggering, not charging. In fact, they appear to be retreating, as if being chased by something far more terrifying. Meanwhile, Jinwoo reflects on the fact that, since they had described this as a high-tier A-rank dungeon, he had come with high expectations. Suddenly, Jinwoo senses something and stops. A serious expression crosses his face. He tells the group there's an urgent matter he must attend to, and that he's leaving. Jiangsu is shocked and protests. Without Jinwoo, they could all be in danger. Jinwoo calmly replies that he's sending someone just as reliable in his place. A shadow emerges from Jinwoo, revealing a monstrous figure. Jiangsu gasps, "Isn't that the ant from the Jeju Island raid?" Jinwoo nods. "I don't think it needs any introductions. It'll handle things from here." He then instructs Beru to protect the humans. Beru asks what he should do with the others. Jinwoo responds coldly, "Do as you please." With a fearsome roar, Beru unleashes a shockwave that startles the hunters. Terrified, one of them wonders aloud if this creature will truly be their ally. His female teammate scolds him for bad-mouthing Jinwoo earlier. Jinwoo then summons 20 additional shadow soldiers and asks the group, "Is this enough?" He then turns to leave. Jiangsu and Yerim call after him, asking if he's really leaving them alone with those monsters. With an intimidating gaze, Jinwoo says that if they prefer, he can dismiss the shadows, but warns them that doing so might not work in their favor. The two fall silent, trembling, and Jiangsu reluctantly agrees. Jinwoo then checks his shadow exchange skill cooldown. 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 16 seconds remaining. Frustrated, he curses under his breath. He can't waste any more time. Without hesitation, he sprints toward the dungeon's exit. Jiangsu, stunned, watches him go. Yoontae asks what they should do now. Jiangsu replies, "Hold on. I'll think of something." As Jinwoo nears the dungeon gate, he sees light ahead. He reflects on the signals he received from the soldiers he left with Gina and the bad feeling gnawing at him. Just then, he encounters a massive army of undead blocking his path. With no time to waste, he glares at them and shouts, "Get out of my way." Drawing twin daggers, he charges, only to witness something completely unexpected. The undead, rather than attack, all kneel before him. Jinwoo, shocked, wonders why they're kneeling. He asks himself, could it be because I'm a high-class necromancer, someone capable of commanding the undead? Without missing a beat, he leaps into the air and calls upon one of his shadows, Kaisel, who materializes beneath him. From above, Jinwoo sees the kneeling undead as he soars toward the dungeon gate. Outside the dungeon, the people waiting are stunned by the sight of Jinwoo riding Kaisel, emerging through the gate like a force of nature. Without delay, he commands Kaisel to fly to Gina as fast as possible. He activates his Monarch's domain, increasing Kaisel's stats by 50%. The chapter ends with Kaisel releasing a powerful, echoing screech as they take off, heading straight for Gina's school. The chapter begins with the shadow orcs slashing the dungeon orcs who had tried to kill Gina. Other students are visibly shaken by the chaos unfolding before them. One of the shadow orcs grabs the heads of 2 dungeon orcs with its large hands and smashes them into the floor with such force that their faces are buried deep into the ground from the impact. The students are left stunned, wondering if these monsters that have appeared are here to protect them, and if they are allies sent to safeguard them. Gina, confused, looks at one of the shadow orcs and asks aloud, "Is Jinwoo here too?" She calls out his name, but the shadow orc immediately places its arm in front of her, blocking her from harm, and gestures toward the window. Outside, a large group of orcs is seen advancing toward them. The scene shifts to a throne room. A crack suddenly appears, and a large explosion occurs. Sitting on the throne is an orc, who introduces himself as Grokter, the chief of the Red Blade tribe. He declares that the final ban has been lifted and that nothing can stop him now. Another orc reports to Grokter that a group of high-ranking orc warriors is helping the humans. Enraged, Grokter shows his sharp teeth and questions whether their tribe cannot deal with just 3 high orcs. How pathetic, he mutters. Grokter then grabs his sword and orders one of his subordinates to lead the way, declaring that it's time to slaughter the high orcs. The scene then transitions to the dungeon where Jinwoo's shadow ants unleash a powerful aura. Meanwhile, members of the Knights Guild are hesitating, unsure whether to remain, fearful of the summoned beasts. Jongsu, however, resolves that they cannot back down, thinking of the reporters outside who would have a field day if they gave up now. Let's do this, he thinks, but as if on cue, Beru appears in front of him. Jongsu, trembling with fear, is momentarily paralyzed. Yet, he forces himself to speak, saying, "Let's go." Beru remains silent. Jongsu, sweating with fear, asks again, "Shall we go?" In a sudden leap, Beru rushes forward, leaving Jongsu puzzled. Before he knows it, Beru returns, tossing something in front of Jongsu, causing him to stumble back in shock. Beru then looks at the dungeon monsters before walking away with the other shadow ants. Jongsu's guild members rush to check on him, and he assures them that he's fine, though he continues to look at Beru in awe. One member asks if they are really going to let the shadow ants lead the raid, to which Jongsu replies, "Look at what Beru tossed." They all notice that it's the head of a death knight, killed effortlessly by Beru, one of the highest-ranking beasts. Jongsu can't believe how strong Beru is. Smiling, he adds, "High-ranking demons drop valuable essence stones. I'm sure you all know how much they're worth. Does anyone want to back out?" When Jongsu looks up, he's startled to realize his guild members have already moved on without him. Yuntae calls out to him, reminding him to hurry before he gets left behind. The scene shifts back to Gina's school, where one of Jinwoo's shadow orcs is locked in combat with Grokter, the chief of the Red Blade tribe. Grokter's followers shout his name as they watch the battle unfold. Grokter, sword drawn, stands facing the shadow orc and speaks. The tattoo of an orc symbolizes victory in battle, proof of how many foes we've slain. He then taunts the shadow orcs, claiming that they have likely claimed a few lives too. He challenges them to make their fight more interesting. Grokter charges, sword raised, but the shadow orcs manage to block his attack, stopping him in his tracks. "Not bad," Grokter acknowledges, impressed by their ability to halt his strike. He grips his sword tightly and increases the force, pushing it through their defense, slicing through the shadow orcs. However, after the first strike, the sliced parts of the shadow orcs begin to regenerate. Grokter, shocked, wonders if they are under a spell, realizing that no matter how many times he strikes them, it seems futile. His mind races. While he could easily kill hundreds of them, something keeps reminding him to focus on killing the humans. His grip tightens on his head as he realizes the situation is growing worse. He knows he must end this now. Suddenly, his eyes catch sight of Gina, standing behind the shadow orcs. Grokter orders his men to grab her, saying, "The shadow orcs are powerless. Just keep attacking them to restrict their movements." Gina and the others watch in horror as the orcs relentlessly assault the shadow orcs. Gina is gripped by fear as Grokter grabs her by the mouth, lifting her off the ground. Grokter sneers, recognizing her magical powers. "So, you're the one behind all this," he says, tightening his grip on her and adding, "Die." But before he can finish, a sudden gust of wind fills the air. A wyvern, moving at breakneck speed, approaches from the distance. Grokter trembles in fear, his hands shaking as he releases his grip on Gina. Songi quickly steps in to help her, asking if she's okay. The wyvern continues to approach, its terrifying roar echoing in the air. Grokter, frozen in fear, stammers, "Something terrifying is coming." Then, Grokter's worst fear is realized as he sees the wyvern in Jinwoo, enveloped in a dark, ominous aura, approaching him. Grokter, panicking, tries to retreat, but before he can act, he hears a loud explosion from the window as something massive lands. Grokter is forced to back away. Gina, still recovering from the orc's assault, feels a hand gently touch her head. She hears Jinwoo's voice saying, "You're safe now." Meanwhile, Grokter is left frozen, staring in horror at the sight of the wyvern and Jinwoo, whose terrifying eyes are filled with rage. Grokter, trembling, begins to introduce himself as the chief of the Red Blade tribe, but he is immediately cut off by Jinwoo. With a cold, chilling gaze, Jinwoo points at Grokter and orders, "Shut up and wait right there." As the dark aura around Jinwoo intensifies, Grokter stands paralyzed, unable to do anything but await his fate. The chapter begins with Jinwoo embracing his sister, Gina, who is in tears. Jinwoo softly tells her that she's safe now and apologizes for arriving late. He then turns to the other students, asking if they are okay. They respond affirmatively. He also checks on Song-yi, who replies that she's fine, though she can't shake off the growing fear she feels toward Jinwoo. As Jinwoo stares at the sight of what was done to his sister, a terrifying glow ignites in his eyes, radiating his immense rage. He commands Igris to take care of Gina, who is standing behind him. Then, he instructs his other shadow soldiers to escort the rest of the students to safety. Kaisel spreads its wings, helping the students out of the area. Suddenly, an orc twitches, catching Jinwoo's attention. Without hesitation, Jinwoo warns, "I told you not to move," as a menacing dark aura begins to emanate from him. Meanwhile, Grokter, the leader of the enemy orcs, is in shock. He realizes now that the immortal high orcs are actually Jinwoo's soldiers. Grokter demands to know who Jinwoo really is and how he can speak their language. Jinwoo doesn't reply, only glaring at him with ominous eyes, the darkness growing thicker around him. When it becomes clear that Jinwoo won't answer, Grokter orders his orcs to attack. One orc charges forward and swings his axe at Jinwoo, but Jinwoo easily catches the attack, holds the orc's fingers, and crushes them in an instant. The orc screams in pain before being slammed into the ground and stomped to death. Two more orcs rush at him. Jinwoo activates Commander's Touch, suspending them in midair. With a simple clench of his fist, he crushes them together until their bones audibly crack. Countless more orcs attack, but Jinwoo destroys them effortlessly with only his bare hands. In a matter of seconds, the entire horde lies defeated. Now standing alone in front of Jinwoo, Grokter is paralyzed with fear. Jinwoo activates again Commander's Touch, and like Grokter did with Gina, he grabs Grokter by the face and slams him into a wall. Holding him there, Jinwoo glances at the lifeless bodies of the innocent students who were killed, his fury rising. He demands to know why the orcs were so hell-bent on killing humans. Grokter, voice trembling, admits that a voice in his head told him to kill humans. Jinwoo narrows his eyes and asks if the voice told him to kill him as well. Grokter only pleads, "Please forgive me." Jinwoo presses again. "When you look at me, do you still hear the voice?" But Grokter repeats the same plea, unable to give a clear answer. Jinwoo concludes that even the voice doesn't consider him human anymore. He generates a dagger in one hand and mutters, "It doesn't matter. I forgive you." But he immediately clarifies, "Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean I'll let you go easily." With a cold expression, he delivers the final blow. Grokter's blood splatters onto the floor. The scene shifts to deep within the dungeon, where the raid by the Knights Guild is still ongoing. Hunter Yerim is seen dragging a vampire, trying to save it from being devoured by one of the ant-type shadow creatures. Frustrated, she mutters, "Do you even realize how valuable these things are? Vampires are worth a fortune." However, the ant pays her no mind. It brushes Yerim aside with its claw, slashing her shoulder in the process. She clutches her wounded arm in pain, helplessly watching the ant successfully seize the vampire and consume it. Suddenly, a powerful roar echoes through the dungeon. It's Beru. The sound makes the ant creature stagger in fear, immediately backing off. Beru strides forward and places a clawed hand gently on Yerim, casting a healing spell. Her injuries begin to heal rapidly. Yerim is left speechless, wondering, how can a summoned beast be better at healing than I am? Moments later, a massive door creaks open inside the dungeon. Emerging from it is the dungeon boss, the dreaded Arch-Lich. Floating ominously, the skeletal figure has a glowing core in its chest and a terrifying presence. Below him are over 10 Death Knights, forming an elite undead guard. The Knights Guild members are frozen in terror at the sight. Jong-soo, their leader, mentally runs through all the notable dungeon bosses he's encountered, but the Arch-Lich stands out. It gained infamy after the annihilation of the Gold Dragon Guild, an incident where it wiped out a major Chinese guild, nearly triggering a dungeon break. The disaster was only prevented thanks to Lu Jigang, but even now, everyone agrees. A strike squad composed solely of A-rank hunters is no match for this boss. Yoontae then turns to Jong-soo in panic. What do we do now? Before Jong-soo can answer, another guild member shouts in alarm. Undead creatures are now pouring in from behind. Jong-soo curses under his breath, realizing that the monsters devoured by the ants have now come back to life. Damn it, he growls, then urgently commands Yerim, block the doors. Yerim quickly chants a spell, casting Sacred Shield. A large, glowing magical barrier forms, sealing off the path. But it's only a temporary solution. Jong-soo watches as the undead slam repeatedly into the shield, and Yerim tells him that it will hold for only 5 more minutes. Worried, Jong-soo mutters, "We're in over our heads without Sung Jinwoo." As the undead continue their assault, a loud screech echoes through the chamber. Jong-soo turns toward the sound and sees a pair of glowing eyes approaching. It's Beru, calmly walking toward the Arch-Lich. Recognizing him instantly, the Arch-Lich sneers, "You bastards, the army of shadows." It then demands, "Why is the king's personal army here to attack us?" Beru calmly opens his claws and points straight at the Arch-Lich. His voice is calm, but commanding. "We were chosen by the king, and you were not." The Arch-Lich's expression turns frantic. "That's impossible. I must speak to the king." But Beru doesn't give him a chance. In a flash, Beru leaps straight in front of the Arch-Lich, and with blinding speed, drives his claw into the boss's chest. His eyes narrow as he mutters with finality, "You sure talk a lot for someone about to die." Chapter 121 began with Beru lunging at the Arch-Lich, the dungeon boss. He thrust his hand into its chest. Simultaneously, the Arch-Lich crashed to the floor, and Beru withdrew a color-green glowing pendant from its chest, the source of its life. Upon seeing this, the dungeon boss could only utter, "No," but Beru ignored him and crushed the pendant. Following this, the Arch-Lich's body gradually disintegrated, and then, one by one, the Arch-Lich's knights also disintegrated. The hunters were astonished by what they witnessed, as Beru had defeated the Arch-Lich and all the undead with a single strike. Afterward, Beru let out a powerful roar. Jong-soo, watching him from a distance, murmured to himself that he knew Beru was strong, but not this strong. Meanwhile, Yoontae said to Jong-soo that it seemed Jinwoo wouldn't even need to set foot inside a gate anymore, as he could clear dungeon gates just by sending his minions. A thought struck Jong-soo. He mused that Jinwoo probably couldn't command all his summoned beasts at once since it would deplete his mana. However, judging by how strong they were, even calling forth half of them would be equivalent to an army more powerful than a major guild. Yoontae then suggested that they shouldn't waste any time and try to acquire Jinwoo's guild. Jong-soo replied that acquire didn't sound right and that alliance would be a better term. An alliance between a new guild founded by the world's finest hunter and their Knights Guild, one of the major 5 guilds in the country. Yoontae retracted his statement, saying he was just joking because, besides what they had just witnessed, it seemed Jinwoo didn't need their help anyway. Jong-soo smiled confidently and told Yoontae not to be ridiculous, stating that the rules couldn't be bent just because it was Sung Jinwoo. Yoontae wondered what Jong-soo meant. Jong-soo explained that while Jinwoo could clear a dungeon using his summoned beasts, there was a minimum number of hunters required in the first place, and there were no exemptions to that rule. He asked Yoontae, for Christ's sake, if he had forgotten about the basic requirements. Hearing this, Yoontae happily agreed with Jong-soo, adding that in that case, Jinwoo could boost their fighting power, and on their side, they could provide him with the necessary number of hunters, making it a win-win situation. Precisely, Jong-soo replied cheerfully, but Yoontae commented that it would mean they would be riding on Jinwoo's coattails. Jong-soo retorted that it was nonsense, explaining that it simply meant they had the right connections. The scene shifted to Gina's school, where many people were waiting outside the gate amidst heavy rain, the sounds of ambulances and rescuers audible. Some parents, remembering their children were still inside, pushed through the crowd to see what had happened. What confronted them were the lifeless bodies of their children. The sorrowful cries of the bereaved parents filled the air. One hunter asked a fellow hunter who was questioning the rescuers if there were any other survivors. Another hunter replied that there were none left. Accompanied by the heavy rain, The mournful wails of the grieving parents continued. The scene transitioned to a black car where Jinwoo and Chairman Go were conversing. Chairman Go read the report, stating that 213 students had quickly escaped and been rescued. 10 others were rescued from the building, but all the other students who hadn't made it out in time had perished. Chairman Go handed Jinwoo his phone, saying, "Perhaps I should have seen this coming." Jinwoo looked at a graph showing a spike in the number of gate appearances in Seoul within the last 6 months, with worldwide statistics trending similarly. All countries were experiencing an exponential surge in the number of gates. Chairman Go added that this wasn't the only strange phenomenon, as more and more awakened individuals were also seeking evaluation. This meant that the number of gates had risen, as had the number of hunters capable of closing them. He remarked, "It's as if the world is trying to maintain a careful balance." Jinwoo thought to himself that a change seemed to be happening. He then asked Chairman Go why he wanted to speak with him now. Chairman Go replied that people from Japan, the United States, China, Russia, France, the UK, Germany, and even countries in the Middle East wanted to meet him. He handed Jinwoo documents containing their special requests. Chairman Go also mentioned that Jinwoo had probably already been contacted through unofficial channels, and Jinwoo recalled his meetings with Adam White together with Michael Connor and Ms. Sellner. Chairman Go continued, saying that, to be honest, the Hunter Association had no right to stop them and could only protect his personal information according to his request. Chairman Go added that whether he wanted to meet them or not was up to him. However, if he intended to leave Korea, Chairman Go feared he wouldn't be able to adapt to the changes afoot. Their vehicle arrived at the hospital where Gina had been taken. As Jinwoo got out of the car, Chairman Go called him back and said he would do everything to provide him with the resources he needed. He earnestly asked Jinwoo to consider staying in Korea, mentioning that the country had 10 official S-rank hunters, including him, but they had lost 3, 2 who died in the Jeju Island raid at the hands of the Beast, and 1 who had left for the United States. Chairman Go was seen clutching his head. For the last time, Chairman Go stated that the association couldn't afford to continue ignoring this matter and must do their part and make every possible effort. Therefore, he told Jinwoo to just say how he could be accommodated. Jinwoo suddenly replied that he wanted to enter high-ranking gates alone, starting now. He then asked Chairman Go if he could make that happen. Chairman Go was taken aback by what he heard and asked if Jinwoo was referring to removing the minimum capacity requirement. Jinwoo nodded and said yes. Chairman Go explained that the reason for the law was for the safety of the hunters, as it prevented haphazardly entering dungeons and getting themselves killed. Chairman Go suddenly flinched and asked Jinwoo if that was why he was forming his own guild. Jinwoo replied yes, and then asked if he was asking for too much. Chairman Go considered that Jinwoo was a one-man strike squad. He then responded that it would be difficult but not impossible, saying, "Leave it to me." The scene shifted to Jinho's cousin, Soo-hyun. She was leaving work and received praise from her colleague for her good work. Her cell phone buzzed, and it was Jinho calling. He asked if she wanted to join his guild. Jinho explained that she wouldn't have to do any actual work and that joining him was better than becoming an ambassador for his father's guild. Soo-hyun asked what was going on with the guild all of a sudden. She then inquired if Jinho knew that Jin-hee was coming to Korea. Jinho replied that of course he knew, as she was his older sister, but dismissed it, saying that what mattered was they still needed one more founding member. Soo-hyun suspiciously asked if he was asking her to join a guild that hadn't even been created yet. She further questioned if he was sure he hadn't been scammed by some shady guy. Jinho laughed and said she would definitely be shocked when she found out who the shady guy was. Soo-hyun quickly asked who it was. The scene moved to the Ahjin Guild office, where Jinwoo was seen asking if this was the person Jinho said would be joining their guild. Jinho confirmed and introduced her as Yu Soo-hyun, his cousin and a certified A-rank hunter. Soo-hyun was surprised to see Jinwoo, saying she couldn't believe she was looking at him right now. Jinho asked what she meant, pointing out that she was the celebrity, not Jinwoo. Jinwoo wondered to himself if Soo-hyun was really an A-rank hunter. Soo-hyun replied that of course, and she was excited to meet him because he was the hunter who had vanished after ruining Lee Min-sung's press conference. Jinwoo then asked if that was the reason for her excitement. In Jinwoo's mind, Jinho was D-rank, and his cousin was A-rank. He wondered if there was a role for genetics in the awakening process. However, Jinwoo then thought that there were cases where both siblings became hunters, and in his case, his father had been a hunter as well. Jinwoo asked her if Jinho had explained everything. Soohyun replied yes. She knew they needed one more founding member. Jinwoo stated that joining their guild would cause quite a stir and asked if she was okay with that. Soohyun replied that anything was better than getting mixed up with Eugene Sung. Jinwoo asked who Eugene Sung was. Jinho whispered to Jinwoo that Jin Sung was his older brother. Jinwoo then asked if he was the one with the bad personality. Soohyun replied that it seemed he had already made a name for himself. After that, Soohyun suddenly requested if they could take a selfie so she could post it on social media. The scene shifted to the Hunter Association office, where its members were having a meeting with Chairman Go. One member asked if he was crazy for wanting to recognize summoned beasts as members of a strike squad, adding that it was complete and utter nonsense. He raised a document showing that they had started putting in place this new regulation as soon as Jinwoo established his guild. He further stated that if it wasn't preferential treatment, he didn't know what was. He remarked that the Hunter Association existed for the good of all hunters, not just for Jinwoo. He then asked Chairman Go to explain himself. Chairman Go replied, "Yes, that's exactly right. It is preferential treatment." At this, the other members murmured in surprise. Chairman Go spoke again, saying he wanted to ask everyone in the meeting room that if they had the option of a strike squad consisting of 20 A-rank hunters or a squad consisting of Sung Jinwoo himself, and if they needed to deploy a team to a dungeon break zone, who would they choose? Chairman Go then addressed Senator Nam Jun-wook, a member of the panel he had heard recently moved to a new apartment building near the Hunters Guild. Chairman Go asked him the reason for moving now that housing prices in that area were higher. Jun-wook replied that the matter was unrelated to their discussion, while visibly sweating at Chairman Go's question and clearing his throat. Chairman Go asked if it wasn't for safety reasons, adding that it was the same for everyone else in South Korea. Anyone with money would surely move somewhere safer. Chairman Go further stated that guilds all over the world were desperate to get Jinwoo. He then asked if they thought Jinwoo would stay in Korea if they were unwilling to compromise with him. He explained that he was asking because he didn't want to make the same mistake as when Hwang Dong-soo had left for America. And if this preferential treatment seemed unreasonable, he asked who they thought would save them if another S-rank gate appeared in South Korea. The scene shifted to Hae-in, who was seen looking at social media. She saw Soohyun's selfie post with Jinwoo and Jinho, captioned "First Day at Ahjin Guild." Hae-in's eyes widened, and she began to tremble. The chapter ended as a rumble could be heard outside Hae-in's house. The chapter begins with Jinwoo and Jinho standing before a massive dungeon gate. Surrounding them are agents from the Hunter Association, securing the perimeter. Jinho's eyes widen in shock at the sheer size of the gate, exclaiming that he's never seen anything this enormous before. In Jinwoo's mind, he thinks Jinho would flip out if he told him that he's already seen a gate this big before, back in Gwangali. Shrugging the thought off, Jinwoo simply says, "Let's go." As they move forward, a swarm of reporters surrounds them, bombarding Jinwoo with questions. One asks how he feels about the Ahjin Guild's first raid. Another inquires why they named their guild Ahjin, and yet another boldly asks about his relationship with his fellow founding member, Yoo Soo-hyun. Confused, Jinwoo turns to Hunter Jin-chul, questioning why the reporters seemed to know so much. Jinwoo thought the association was supposed to keep his personal information private. Jin-chul explains that while the association can protect his personal details, they can't stop the public from figuring out gate locations. He advises Jinwoo to be more careful with what they post online. This reminds Jinwoo of Soohyun's recent selfie on Instagram, and he notes to be more cautious going forward. Jinho then asks if they should call in a hauling or mining team since he doubts he can handle everything himself. Jinwoo reassures him there's no need for that. His shadow army will take care of everything. At that moment, Jin-chul, holding a manometer, is startled when it detects that all of Jinwoo's summoned beasts are B rank or higher. In his thoughts, he notes that this squad alone is more than qualified to enter an A-rank gate. He reflects that this would silence anyone questioning whether Jinwoo was receiving preferential treatment. Jin-chul then says they're good to go and hands the meter to another agent. But before they enter, Jin-chul surprises them by removing his suit and putting on armor. He announces that the chairman has ordered him to observe the raid, wanting to ensure it's truly safe. He'll be accompanying them as a representative of the surveillance team, just for today. Jinwoo asks if he'll be all right, catching Jinshul off guard. "Pardon," he responds, surprised by Jinwoo's concern. A few minutes into the raid, Jinshul's face is filled with disbelief. A-rank beasts swarm the dungeon, but Jinwoo's shadow army handles them effortlessly. A group of shadows slashes through monsters, while Tank slices off a monster's head with a single claw strike. Iron, positioned behind them, joins the battle as well. The shadow ants feast on a monster, while the shadow orcs swiftly stab and dispatch their enemies. Even veteran hunters with exceptional combat skills would have struggled in this dungeon, Jinshul thinks. Then, Beru appears and slaughters a monster with a single strike. Jinshul internally notes that the dungeon beasts are no match for Jinwoo's shadow army. They just keep regenerating. He specifically takes note of one shadow, Igris, sensing that he is exceptionally powerful. Igris readies for battle, his sword crackling with power. With one mighty swing, he unleashes his storm of the white flame, creating a lightning storm. Jinshul is stunned. Only top-level mages can use lightning magic, yet Igris creates sparks with each strike. In the blink of an eye, Igris finishes off several monsters in a single storm-filled slash. Jinshul wonders if Igris is really just an A rank, then realizes probably not. He may be even higher. Jinshul begins to question whether he could even survive a one-on-one battle with this Shadow Knight. Meanwhile, Jinwoo notices one of the shadow ants eating a monster's corpse and kicks it away, scolding it for not listening. Beast corpses are valuable, he reminds them. He then orders other shadows to continue mining mana crystals. Watching all of this unfold, Jinshul realizes that Jinwoo can clear an A-rank dungeon, retrieve beast corpses, and mine crystals, all by himself. This isn't just a one-man strike squad. Now, he understands why the chairman wanted him to observe. Suddenly, the dungeon boss appears, a towering, powerful creature. Jinwoo tells his shadows that those who are still working can stay, but the rest should return. The shadows vanish. Jinshul asks why Jinwoo sent them back. They could easily handle the boss. Jinwoo replies, summoning his daggers. "If I rely on them too much, I'll lose my touch." He dashes forward, a shockwave erupting from his movement, and with a single slash to the head, he defeats the boss. Jinshul is left speechless. The boss fell in one strike. The corpse crashes to the ground as a system notification pops up for Jinwoo, confirming the boss has been defeated. Jinwoo is surprised to see that all his job-specific skills have leveled up, including Shadow Extraction, Shadow Preservation, Monarch's Domain, and Shadow Exchange. His level now stands at 101. The cooldown for Shadow Exchange has also decreased by 1 hour. He thinks to himself, if the cooldown decreases with each level, he may eventually be able to teleport anywhere instantly, ensuring his mother and sister's safety no matter where he is. Jinshul examines the boss's scale, thinking it's strong enough to be used as a shield or armor, but Jinwoo sliced through it with mere daggers. Then, his eyes widen again. Jinwoo performs Shadow Extraction, uttering, "Arise." The system notifies that the voice of the monarch has roused the fighting spirit of the dead. The extraction is successful, and the new shadow starts at level 13. Jinwoo notes the new shadow's mana output is enormous, possibly on par with Tusk's power. Though smaller than its original form, it might grow in size, just like Tusk. Either way, it's a huge addition to his army. The system prompts Jinwoo to name the new shadow. After some thought, he names it Jima. Jinho, watching from the side, can only say wow, amazed at how Jinwoo turned such a powerful beast into one of his summons. Jinho then notices the dungeon beginning to collapse and urges Jinwoo to leave. Jinwoo agrees but pauses, glancing at the boss's corpse, wondering what to do with it. Outside the gate, reporters are shocked. Suddenly, Tusk emerges, carrying the boss's corpse. At first, the reporters panic, but realizing it's one of Jinwoo's summons, they calm down. Someone asks, "Does this mean the A-rank gate has been cleared?" Flashbulbs pop as cameras click away, capturing Tusk, who sheepishly smiles at the attention. Jinwoo, Jinho, and Jinshul step out. Jinho comments that there are even more reporters now. Clearly everyone's interested in their first raid. Jinwoo remarks that the attention seems a bit excessive. Meanwhile, Jinshul's face is haggard, still processing everything he witnessed. Later, at the Hunter Association office, Jinshul reports to Chairman Go. The chairman acknowledges that Jinshul has witnessed countless raids as a veteran hunter, but after hearing his report, even he admits, it must have been overwhelming. Jinshul added with conviction, that wasn't a raid, it was a massacre. His face was still wet with sweat, his eyes distant, leaving Chairman Go speechless as well. Chairman Go doesn't respond immediately, instead telling Jinshul to take some rest. He then turns to the window, deep in thought. Jinwoo cleared an A-rank dungeon, retrieved valuable corpses, and mined crystals, all without help. Calling him a one-man strike squad is an understatement. Chairman Go smiles, realizing Jinwoo is more than that. He's a one-man guild, a guild unto himself, and soon, the hunters of Korea and the entire world will witness the shift in power. The scene shifts to Shinjuku, Tokyo in Japan. The bustling city streets come to a sudden halt. Cars, bicycles, and people freeze as they all turn their eyes toward the sky. Shock spreads across their faces. Gasps fill the air. Some cry out, "What is that?" While others can only whisper, "Oh my God!" A massive presence looms menacingly in the sky above Tokyo. This marks the end of the Ahjin Guild Arc. The next arc, the Double Dungeon Arc, where Jinwoo begins to unravel the mystery behind his powers and returns to the place where it all began, the Double Dungeon. The chapter begins in Japan, where three male hunters are seen talking among themselves. They are in disbelief that all the major guilds in Japan, including Blade, Phantoms, Invincible Kings, and Snowy Mountains, have been summoned. One of them comments, "This must be a huge deal." Suddenly, the three hunters are stunned when they spot members of the Blade Guild approaching. One of them remarks, "Isn't that Sugimoto Reiji, the Vice Guild Master, along with their S-rank hunters Tawada, Hoshino, and Atsushi?" Another corrects him, saying that Reiji is now the Guild Master, ever since Gotoruji was lost during a raid along with 7 other S-rank hunters. A third chimes in, "Yeah, I heard it happened because they were carrying out Chairman Matsumoto's crooked scheme." Another adds bitterly, "They monopolized the S ranks. It's only right this happened to them. The Blade Guild's days are numbered." The last one adds, "Who knows? If we play our cards right, maybe we'll have a shot at becoming Japan's greatest guild." As they were talking, Reiji and his team stopped walking, having overheard their conversation. The group of elite hunters stared coldly at the three men, who immediately panicked and hurried away. One of them scratched his head nervously. Hoshino, clearly irritated, muttered, "Even losers like them couldn't look us in the eye before, but now they're getting cocky just because Mr. Ruji's gone." He sneered, calling them opportunistic bastards. Tawada then spoke up, saying he heard a rumor that the Phantom Guild was planning to acquire the Snowy Mountain Guild. If that happened, they would have 4 S-rank hunters, equal to Blade's current roster. Reiji scoffed at the idea. Do they really think merging will make them the best guild in Japan? Ridiculous. Even if they combine their guilds, they still can't match us. The scene shifts to a government building where the Prime Minister slams his hand on the table, angry and frustrated. He demands to know why the Hunter Association hasn't done anything yet. An S-rank gate had spawned in the heart of Tokyo, and now he was being told that the association had no countermeasures in place. What happens if there's a dungeon break? He asks. Chairman Matsumoto replies that even S-rank hunters aren't strong enough to clear an S-rank gate. Only national-level hunters might have a chance. A hunter with a scar across his eye speaks up, saying he's already summoned all the guild masters in Japan, so he should stop asking obvious questions. He adds, "You all saw what happened in Jeju Island. We know exactly what's coming." Another hunter with long hair interjects, saying pessimistic remarks won't help. What they need is a concrete plan. He suggests hiring Thomas Andre, one of the top hunters in the world. However, a bespectacled hunter counters, questioning whether the country could afford someone like Andre. He adds that most countries are already dealing with their own surge in gates, and only a handful can spare hunters. Even then, it's unclear how many would be willing to tackle an S-rank gate. Suddenly, Reiji speaks up, revealing that there is one hunter who's willing to help, for a price. His name is Yuri Orlov, a barrier specialist, and Reiji plans to hire him for the upcoming mission. The scene then shifts to Sung Jinwoo, smiling inside a car, in disbelief that he has now reached level 101. He had received the key to the Kartinon Temple at level 100, and all his job-specific skills had leveled up as well. He wonders what will happen once he reaches level 102, glancing at the temple key in his hand. As he steps out of the car, Jinwoo wonders whether Jinho is managing things on his own. He thinks it's good to have a motivated vice guild master, though he realizes they definitely need to hire more people. Suddenly, he notices someone, Hunter Haein, who also seems surprised to see him. She quickly turns around, seemingly trying to walk away. But in a flash, Jinwoo appears in front of her, startling her, and asks why he suddenly appeared like that. Jinwoo, confused, asks why she was trying to run away, and what she's doing near his office. Haein nervously replies that she had left her car in the parking lot. Jinwoo recalls they had used shadow exchange previously, so it makes sense she forgot. Haein then asks Jinwoo if he's free right now. Jinwoo pauses. In her mind, Haein struggles with questions she wants to ask, like why he took a photo with Soo-hyun, whether they're dating, or why Soo-hyun was hired instead of her despite being just an A rank. But instead, she only says that she has a message from Min Byung-gu about his powers. Jinwoo is shocked and suggests they talk inside the office. Inside, Haein asks why no one else is around. Jinwoo explains that the vice guild master is out on business. She realizes it's just the two of them. While Jinwoo prepares coffee, he asks how Min Byung-gu managed to relay a message. Haein explains that she had a mysterious experience that she heard a voice during a moment when Byung-gu's shadow appeared, grabbed her, and told her to warn Jinwoo about the power within him. Byung-gu explained that something had pulled him into an endless darkness. He was no longer himself, yet his sense of self remained intact. He felt like a slave, revived for the sole purpose of serving. What terrified him most was that he felt joy in doing so. Haein asked what he meant, but Byung-gu only warned that Jinwoo's powers were incredibly strong and frightening. Before he could explain further, a bright light engulfed Haein, cutting off the message. The last words she heard were, "Remember, Sung Jinwoo's true army is." Later, Jinwoo is back inside a dungeon, eating bread while thinking about what Haein told him. Whether it's true or not, he feels that finding the source of his powers is now more important than becoming stronger. His shadow army is fighting monsters. Jinho comments that it reminds him of the days when they raided C-rank dungeons. Jinwoo tells him not to talk with his mouth full. Jinho asks why Jinwoo doesn't just run his own business and let his army do all the work. Jinwoo thinks to himself that he gets fewer experience points when he's far from them, and he can't monitor what they're doing if he's not there. Just then, an ant shadow is seen eating a dungeon monster, which shocks Jinho. Jinho then asks how Jinwoo's sister, Gina, is doing. Jinwoo says the doctors told her to rest for now. He also adds that his most trusted shadow is watching over her, so she's safe. Jinwoo decides to check on her. He activates Shadow Preservation, Level 2, Shared Senses, allowing him to see through the eyes of his shadow soldier. He sees Beru watching a period drama, while Gina sleeps peacefully. Jinwoo wonders if Beru likes watching dramas. He then checks on his mother, who is out shopping at the market, and also catches a glimpse of Hunters Jong-in and Yoonho in the middle of an argument. When he shifts his view to Haein, he accidentally sees her taking a shower, which causes Jinwoo to blush and recoil in surprise. Jinho notices his reaction and asks if he spaced out for a moment, but Jinwoo quickly denies it, thinking to himself that he definitely needs to apologize to Haein, maybe even treat her to dinner. Jinho changes the topic and asks Jinwoo if he heard about the S-rank gate in Shinjuku, which could break in 3 days if not cleared. Jinwoo says he did receive a call, but he has other pressing matters, namely, the Kartinon Temple, which has 26 hours, 51 minutes, and 49 seconds left. Holding the temple key, Jinwoo believes this is an invitation from the system and wonders what answers it holds. After thinking for a moment, Jinwoo realized that there was still 1 day left, and soon, he would have the answers he was looking for. He told Jinho that once he finished eating, they would head out for work. Jinho quickly agreed. The scene shifts to a building where Yuri Orlov, an S-rank support-type hunter, is introduced. He claims to be the best support-type hunter in the world. Speaking with the Blade Guild members, he notes that it was smart to evacuate the civilians, but he criticizes the lack of manpower. He questions whether it's true that only 6 S-rank hunters are being sent. Reiji confirms, explaining that one S rank from each guild must stay behind to deal with the multiple A rank gates appearing across Japan. Yuri slams a bottle of alcohol on the table, declaring that this plan won't work. He demands $3.6 billion, or $10 million per day, in exchange for holding the gate. The chapter ends with his arrogant smile and glowing green eyes as he declares, "Hire me, and I'll hold that gate back as long as you want." The chapter opens with Reiji in shock and disbelief at Yuri Orlov's outrageous asking price, $10 million per day. Yuri, however, merely smiles and confirms the amount, stating it totals $3.6 billion for 1 year, a price that could potentially save their country. He even jokes that it's not like he's asking for $36 trillion and remarks that his rate is far less than what Thomas would charge. Hoshino then turns to Tawada, asking if she understands Russian or has any idea what the drunken man is saying. Tawada replies that she's not sure, but it definitely doesn't sound good. Yuri, unfazed, asks mockingly whether they're ready to become national heroes for $10 million a day, or would they rather let their country fall to save a little cash. He laughs loudly, adding that they're in no position to be picky. In fact, he says, they should be on their hands and knees licking his boots. Reiji responds, noting how confident Yuri seems in his own abilities. Yuri smugly confirms this, claiming he's a much better investment than hiring the hundreds of losers standing behind him. Sensing the insult, Hoshino grows visibly angry. Tawada admits she doesn't fully understand what was said, but she can tell Yuri is talking down to them. Suddenly, magical strands of a barrier appear, restraining both Hoshino and Tawada. It's Yuri's doing, and he declares they can't move an inch without his permission. His hand glows with a green aura, visibly controlling the barrier. He then challenges them to try their best and break free. Shock and fear flash across the faces of the two S ranks. Hoshino can't believe their movements were restricted so easily, while Tawada feels like someone has bound him tightly. Yuri continues, boasting that he can block the S-rank gate and even save the lives of their comrades. "How does that sound?" he asks. "An enticing offer, isn't it?" Reiji thanks him for demonstrating his abilities, but he's unsure whether the government would approve such a steep cost. Clutching his seat tightly, Reiji reflects on whether trusting this man is actually their best option. Eventually, he retracts his earlier doubts and says he has someone to call. The scene shifts to Jinwoo's house, where he's putting on his shoes, preparing to leave. His mother watches with concern, and her sudden question catches him off guard. She asks if there's really nothing for her to worry about. Jinwoo smiles and reassures her that there's nothing to worry about, and that he's just heading out for an appointment. As he opens the door, he promises her he'll return. He opens his inventory and checks the key to the Kartinon temple. A countdown appears, nearly at its end. As it completes, his eyes glow with determination. The key emits a soft glow accompanied by a whooshing sound, and a system message pops up. The location of the gate has been revealed. Scene transition at Gina's school. Police lines seal off the area around a recently spawned gate. Two male agents note how lucky it is that the school is closed. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. A female agent notices a man approaching. She attempts to stop him, stating that the area is off limits. However, when the man removes his hood, she recognizes him immediately, Sung Jinwoo. He asks how long the gate has been open. She answers, 3 days ago. Jinwoo is stunned. He realizes that while the system said it would reveal the location after a certain time, it never mentioned that the gate would actually spawn beforehand. Jinwoo thinks to himself, 3 days have already passed, and it's already late. He suspects the gate is likely C rank and not particularly dangerous, then asks if any hunter team has entered. The female agent confirms that a strike squad entered 2 hours ago. Jinwoo pushes forward, declaring that the raid must be called off immediately. The agent objects, saying the manometer only indicates a C-rank gate. Jinwoo ignores her and warns that the strike squad is in grave danger. If the raid isn't stopped, they'll all die. He enters the gate, promising to bring the team back safely. Inside the dungeon, dead beasts are scattered across the ground. The strike squad stands in front of a massive sealed door, puzzled as to why they can't open it. Their spells and strongest attacks are useless. It's as if the door is immune. Some consider retreating. Suddenly, Jinwoo appears, startling the squad members. He warns that it's a trap. When asked who he is, Jinwoo responds, "I'm someone who survived a double dungeon." His name quickly spreads among the squad, Sung Jinwoo. He tells them there's terrible danger beyond that door and urges them to leave, saying he'll handle it alone. As Jinwoo approaches the door and checks for locks, it won't open. He thinks it is magically shut. Suddenly, a system message appears. The doors to the Kartinon temple are currently locked. Please use the key. Realizing this is different from last time, Jinwoo pulls out the key from his inventory. He thinks that this is the reason why he needed it. He unlocks the door, surprising the hunters behind him because just moments ago, the door wouldn't budge. One squad member objects, stating that the Courage Guild purchased the permit for this raid, so Jinwoo has no right to make them leave. Others agree, pointing out that even as an S rank, he can't just give orders. Jinwoo calmly replies that he won't stop anyone. If anyone wants to enter, they're free to do so. A bold, armored hunter steps forward and walks in. A system alert flashes. Someone has entered the temple without a key. Entry is not permitted. Suddenly, a massive beast wielding a sword appears and slashes at the hunter. Jinwoo quickly pulls him back, just in time. The beast glares at them ominously. Jinwoo warns them that there are many more like it inside. Does anyone else still want to go in? He asks. The terrified hunter falls silent. Jinwoo instructs everyone to exit the dungeon and contact the association to report that a double dungeon has appeared. As Jinwoo enters alone, the system displays. The one who holds the key has entered the temple. The doors slam shut behind him, shocking the other hunters. Inside, blue flames ignite along the torches, just like before. Giant statues line the walls, one of them depicted with wings and holding a slate inscribed with the commandments. At the far end sits the statue of God, the same monster Jinwoo encountered before. Jinwoo thinks to himself, this is where it all began. And finally, I'm back. But now Jinwoo knows. The statues aren't beasts, they're just puppets. He approaches the winged statue holding the tablet, the only one radiating mana. Standing before it, Jinwoo asks, "Are you going to stay silent forever?" Then he says, "It's time to give me some answers." The chapter ends as the statue forms a chilling smile, its yellow eyes glowing. It speaks, "I see you have finally made it this far." The chapter begins at an airport in Japan, where Yuri Orlov has just landed. A large crowd, including reporters, swarms around him, and the area is filled with the flashes of camera lights. Several reporters ask him how he plans to block the gate. Smiling confidently, Yuri replies that he will do the same thing he has always done. He explains that he will create a massive magic circle around the gate, and once he pours his magical energy into it, everything inside will be completely sealed. Nothing will be able to escape. Skeptical reporters press further, questioning if he's truly capable of blocking an S-class gate alone. One even asks how he responds to people who find his claims hard to believe. Yuri admits that it would be impossible to maintain the barrier using only his own magic energy. However, he reveals that his magic circle can absorb magical energy from its surroundings to sustain itself. He adds that if a large number of mana stones were scattered around Tokyo, his magic circle would absorb that energy and become stronger. He compares it to starting a car. Once his barrier is activated, it will begin to draw energy on its own and transform into an even sturdier fortress. Confidently smiling, Yuri points to the crowd and declares, "I will save all of you," urging them to remember who their savior is. Meanwhile, at the Korean Hunter Association headquarters, Chairman Go and Hunter Woo Jin-chul are watching Yuri Orlov's interview on TV. Chairman Go admits that he doesn't know whether Yuri can truly block an S-rank gate, but his concern lies more in what might happen if Yuri fails. Suddenly he asks about Hunter Sung Jinwoo's current whereabouts. Woo Jin-chul, handing over a document, replies that he has been moving from gate to gate around Seoul. The highlighted areas on the document represent the gates that the Ahjin Guild has requested to raid. Surprised at the number of requests, Chairman Go asks if all those highlighted areas are part of the request. Jin-chul confirms and notes that there is a risk of conflict due to overlapping territories with the White Tiger, the Hunters, and Reaper guilds, all of which operate within the Seoul metropolitan area. Chairman Go smiles, commenting that a small guild with only one combatant is growing fast, now equal in strength to a multi-type guild. Jinchul agrees, saying he had been thinking the same thing. Chairman Go then asks if the Ahjin Guild has given any explanation for their unusual request. Jinchul replies that they simply stated they have their reasons and want to be entrusted with the nearby gates for just 1 week. Chairman Go shrugs it off, saying it's not a big deal. Suddenly, Jinchul receives a phone call. He excuses himself, and Chairman Go does the same, saying he has an appointment to attend. On the call, Jinchul is informed that a report has been filed and it might be important for him to look at it. The caller asks if he remembers the school where orcs previously appeared. Jinchul asks if something happened there again. The caller replies that nothing has happened yet, but a new gate has appeared on the school grounds. What's more shocking is that it's a double dungeon. Jinchul is visibly stunned. The caller then adds that Hunter Sung Jinwoo has already entered the dungeon. The scene shifts to the interior of the double dungeon, dimly lit by flickering torches. At the center stands a massive hooded statue with wings, slowly spreading them open. Sung Jinwoo faces it in silence. Suddenly, the stone slate inscribed with commandments begins to crack, then shatters completely before his eyes. From the shadows, the statue face emerge, marked by a terrifying grin and glowing red eyes and a sinister presence. It speaks at last, "You've arrived." Jinwoo, surprised, wonders aloud if he just broke the slate that easily. He concludes that maybe the commandments were meaningless from the start. The beast replies that they once meant something, but now they no longer matter. Jinwoo asks if the statue was the one who summoned him here, to which the he answers yes. When Jinwoo asks if it's a monster, the beast claps and says he is asking the wrong question. Instead, Jinwoo should ask himself what he is, not who the statue is. The statue then announces that this is Jinwoo's final test. If he can still stand on 2 feet at the end, everything he wants to know will be revealed. That will be his reward. After that, large statues begin to surround Jinwoo. He tries to summon his shadow soldiers, saying, "Come out," but the beast snaps its fingers and says, "Not that way." It tells Jinwoo that this is a place of testing and all class-specific skills are sealed. He cannot use them during the trial. Not only that, but potions, inventory functions, recovery effects from leveling up, and quest completion bonuses are all disabled. A system notification appears, confirming he cannot exit the chamber until the test is complete. Surrounded by giant statues, Jinwoo realizes all the cards he had prepared are now useless. He mutters, "So you want to play it like this?" One giant statue charged toward him with a massive sword. Jinwoo thought to himself, "Even if I can't use my items, I can still rely on my raw strength." With his left hand, he caught the incoming blade and crushed it with a powerful slash of his own. In one swift motion, he hurled the shattered piece of the weapon straight into the statue's eye. Without hesitation, he leapt forward and stomped on the lodged blade, driving it deeper into the giant's head and finishing it off for good. Another statue wielding an axe follows, but Jinwoo slashes the axe in half like it was made of butter. He quickly dives down with a dagger and stabs the giant statue through the head. A third giant statue, this one with a bow, fires an arrow. Jinwoo deflects it, splits it midair, and kicks the broken arrow so forcefully that it pierces the archer's skull. "I've been waiting for this moment. I live for this," Jinwoo thinks, as he slashes through another beast, his eyes glowing with fierce determination. Overhead, the winged statue watches the battle and comments that Jinwoo's human body has gone far and grown tremendously. But it also says that it's too early to end the test. Suddenly, Jinwoo heard heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. He turned to see a massive statue, the statue of God, towering before him. Standing beside the winged statue as he focused on its face, a chilling sense of familiarity struck him. It wore the same terrifying grin and glowing red eyes as it had during their first encounter. The chapter ends with the winged statue declaring, "It's time to worship God." The chapter opens inside the Korean Hunter Association office, where Chairman Go is seen in conversation with Chairman Shigeo Matsumoto of the Japanese Hunter Association. Also present in the room are interpreters, including Japanese Hunter Hanakawa. Mr. Matsumoto slides a contract across the table and declares that the Japanese Hunter Association will not take any of the mana crystals from Jeju Island. Surprised, Chairman Go asks, "But why?" Matsumoto replies seriously, "Because in return, We want to hire Mr. Sung Jinwoo. Thanks to the translator, Chairman Go fully understands Matsumoto's proposal. His reaction is simply to laugh, commenting that it's a shame, as Jinwoo isn't a member of the Korean Hunter Association. Matsumoto responds that he's aware of this. However, Jinwoo cannot be contacted except through the Korean Association. He clarifies that they're not asking Chairman Go to speak to Jinwoo on their behalf. They simply want the chance to negotiate with him directly. As Chairman Go reads through the contract, he realizes just how much money they're willing to give up for this opportunity. With Goto Ruji gone, Japan no longer has the power to block an S-rank gate. Considering Sung Jinwoo's potential, Chairman Go begins to see this as a reasonable offer. After reading, Chairman Go suddenly puts the document down on the table and announces that they'll continue the discussion without interpreters. Taken aback, Mr. Matsumoto asks if Chairman Go knows how to speak Japanese. Chairman Go answers that his father ran a small business in Japan when he was a child, then warns Matsumoto that if he's thinking of pulling any petty tricks, it would be wise to stop now. Outside the office, the interpreters wait, unaware of the tension inside. Matsumoto is shocked by Chairman Go's statement and asks what he means. Chairman Go replies that he's heard the rumor. The Blade Guild has cut ties with the Japanese Hunter Association. Matsumoto abruptly stands up and shouts, asking how he could possibly know that. Chairman Go calmly explains that it was obvious. The Blade Guild had rejected the support funds from the association and instead accepted only government subsidies. Originally, the Blade Guild had served as the hands and feet of the Japanese Hunter Association. Under Goto Ruji's influence, they could easily rally S-rank hunters. But now, things are different. Ever since the Blade Guild fell apart, the remaining guilds have been in conflict, each vying for power. The association has lost its ability to control them. Chairman Go asks, "Isn't that right?" Then adds that if this gate cannot be blocked, all the responsibility will fall on President Matsumoto himself. Matsumoto's face is visibly distressed and anxious. Chairman Go accuses him of acting with impure intentions, though he acknowledges that Goto Ruji once represented Japan with pride. In Chairman Go's hand is a small device. Holding it out, he states that the responsibility for the fall of the Blade Guild and the death of Goto Ruji lies with Matsumoto because of his petty schemes. Matsumoto is visibly stunned as Chairman Go reveals that the device is a black box from Japan's transceiver system, one that belonged to Goto Ruji's team. Furious, Chairman Go demands if Matsumoto truly believed, he wouldn't uncover the truth. His face burns with anger, his eyes glowing with power as his aura flares violently around him. He declares that discussing mana crystals is now meaningless. If this information were to become public, he says coldly, wouldn't the people of Japan turn against you even more? In a stunning show of strength, Chairman Go crushes the black box in his hand, creating a massive shockwave. However, he says, "I'm not cold-hearted enough to do something that cruel." Matsumoto stumbles back in fear, overwhelmed by the impact and Chairman Go's presence. Chairman Go explains that he doesn't want the entire country, or all of Asia, thrown into chaos because of one man's scheme. He finishes by saying he owes Sung Jinwoo a thank you for this outcome. The scene shifts to the depths of the double dungeon, where Jinwoo continues to battle the stone statues. He slices clean through the head of one statue, but waves of giant statues keep coming. They just keep coming, he thinks. Suddenly, Jinwoo glances behind the attacking statues and spots the statue of God, its eyes glowing as it charges a laser beam. Jinwoo realizes it's too late to dodge. In that case, he mutters. Power surges into his hand as he activates Commander's Touch. His aura extends and envelopes the statues in front of him. At the same time, the laser beam fires from the eyes of the statue of God. Using the statues, Jinwoo stacks them in front of him as a makeshift shield. The laser strikes, burning through the statues. Just then, a system message appears. Your skill Dominator's Touch has evolved into its final form, Commander's Authority. Despite the protection, the laser beam still penetrates. Jinwoo sidesteps with a leap, barely avoiding it. He realizes that a direct hit at his current level would be fatal. He must eliminate the statue of God first. Planting his foot with tremendous force, the floor cracks beneath him. He leaps toward the statue of God at blinding speed. The massive beast raises its foot and slams it down, causing a huge explosion, smiling, thinking it crushed Jinwoo. But then, a glowing light shoots up its body. Jinwoo, untouched, was ascending. The statue was caught off guard as it noticed a glowing light rapidly scaling its body. In a single, powerful leap, Jinwoo seemed to fly straight toward its head. Sensing the incoming attack, the beast lowered its head and began charging another laser beam. Jinwoo quickly noticed this, and in that split second, he had a realization. If he combined his speed with the power of his dominator's authority, he could reach the statue's blind spot before the attack was unleashed. Activating the skill, Jinwoo extended his aura toward the statue's shoulder. With a swift pull using the gravitational force, he launched himself onto the statue's shoulder, narrowly dodging the laser beam. He marveled at the strength of the gravitational pull. It was incredibly powerful, and even though he had used only a fraction of his strength, it still worked on a target of this size. He acknowledged that the skill upgrade had made a significant difference. Now standing on the statue's shoulder, Jinwoo could see the surprise etched into the giant's expression. Without hesitation, he activated his mutilation skill. A barrage of slashes rained down on the statue's face. However, to his shock, the usually unstoppable Demon King's dagger, known to slice through nearly anything, barely left scratches. The statue smirked, realizing it hadn't sustained any real damage. Jinwoo concluded that if slicing wouldn't work, brute force was the answer. He leaped again, aiming for a visible crack on the statue's face, one he had spotted earlier when it was smiling. Grabbing onto the statue with his left hand, he gathered a massive surge of aura into his right fist. Clenching it tightly, he unleashed a devastating punch aimed directly at the weak spot. The impact was immense. The statue's face dented under the force, and the crack widened, spreading like shattered glass. The once smirking statue now wore a look of fear. From a distance, the winged statue observed the battle and smiled, amused that Jinwoo had used such an attack on its marvelous creation. Jinwoo, undeterred, followed up with another massive punch, again targeting the same area on the statue's cheek. This time, the giant statue tilted from the blow. Jinwoo stepped back, gathered all his strength, and thought to himself, "Let me show you what it truly means to be level 103. He struck the same spot with yet another thunderous punch. Cracks spread across the statue's body, and with a deafening rumble, the massive figure toppled to the ground, creating a powerful shockwave as it collapsed. Jinwoo descended from the rubble, only to be immediately surrounded by a new wave of armored statues. They charged at him in unison. Without wasting a second, Jinwoo activated Commander's authority once more. In a blink, the statues were slammed to the ground, pinned by his overwhelming gravitational force. As the dust began to clear, Jinwoo stood tall, clenching his fist. In his mind, he thanked the battle. It had pushed him further, and he could feel himself growing even more powerful. Then he heard clapping. He turned to find the winged statue, who applauded him and said, "Impressive." Jinwoo replied coldly, "You'd better keep your promise." The winged statue chuckled in response. "The test isn't over yet." As it spoke, the stone on its face began to crumble, revealing something underneath. "Didn't you realize?" it said. "I'm still here." Jinwoo's eyes widened in shock as a system notification popped up. "Urgent quest. An enemy must be defeated within the allotted time. Failure will result in death. Time limit, 10 minutes. The winged statue then declared, "I am the final test." Jinwoo narrowed his eyes and demanded, "Who the hell are you?" The statue grinned. "Pretty sure that's a silly question, but I'll answer it anyway." As the half fragments of its stone mask fell away, a pale, human-like face emerged from beneath. "I am the architect of the system," it declared, its voice calm but ominous. Then, it asked, "Are you satisfied with that answer?" The chapter begins outside the double dungeon, where members of the Korean Hunters Association's surveillance team, led by Hunter Woo Jin-shul, are seen arriving. They are being guided by a bespectacled female agent toward the gate. In Woo Jin-shul's thoughts, he feels fortunate to have gathered 7 elite hunters from the association who were available. However, deep down, he knows that even they aren't enough to assist Hunter Sung Jinwoo. He's simply preparing for the worst-case scenario. As they near the gate, Jin-shul suddenly senses an overwhelmingly powerful aura that stuns him. His companions quickly notice him freezing in place and call out to him. Jinwoo wonders aloud what this terrifying aura is and asks if the others feel it too. He tries to figure out where the bone-chilling energy is coming from and describes it as a terrifying storm of mana. The aura is so intense it feels as though death itself is creeping up behind him, its scythe already at his throat. In concern, Jinwoo asks whether any major guilds are currently on standby. One of his teammates responds that the Hunters Guild is ready to raid if needed. Jinwoo then inquires about their two S-rank hunters. Another team member confirms that both Hunter Choi Jong-in and Hunter Cha Hae-in have agreed to participate. With a serious tone, Jinwoo orders an emergency request to be submitted to the Hunters Guild, emphasizing that their cooperation is crucial. He then wonders to himself what on earth Sung Jinwoo is dealing with. The scene shifts back inside the double dungeon. The architect's wings flutter rapidly as Jinwoo watches. In an instant, the wings morph into hands, and the architect disappears from sight, reappearing right beside Jinwoo. Without warning, it launches a powerful, close-range punch. Caught off guard by the speed and force, Jinwoo is unable to dodge. The architect sends him flying into a wall, crashing with an explosion so intense it leaves him injured and barely able to move. As Jinwoo tries to recover, he realizes the architect isn't finished yet. Another fierce punch nearly hits him, followed by a barrage of relentless strikes. The architect smiles wickedly as it continues its assault, but suddenly, its expression shifts to surprise. Jinwoo is blocking each attack with his hands. Jinwoo's glowing eyes peer through the barrage, locked onto the architect. Impressed, the architect acknowledges Jinwoo's resilience, saying, "Impressive, truly impressive," admitting that Jinwoo has exceeded expectations. Still, another punch connects with Jinwoo's face. Despite the pain, Jinwoo pushes forward, closing the distance and unleashing a powerful counterattack that sends the architect flying. Kneeling from the impact, the architect's eyes glow as it muses, "Who knew fighting a human would be this fun?" It adds that never in its many years did it consider a human a worthy opponent. With a grin, it says, "How very amusing," as half of its stone face begins to crumble. From afar, Jinwoo watches, blood obscuring his vision. He reflects on how reaching level 101 might have triggered the architect's invitation, perhaps believing Jinwoo to be unworthy. But Jinwoo believes otherwise. He calls out to the architect, demanding answers. Why it created the system, why he was chosen as the player, and what's happening in the world. The architect suddenly charges at Jinwoo. "Do you want to know?" It sneers. "I see. Maybe you think you won't get the answers if you kill me." Jinwoo dashes away, realizing that close combat puts him at a disadvantage. He activates his skill, Dominator's Authority, a powerful aura radiating from his hand. The architect notices this and questions whether Jinwoo plans to attack from afar. "It's useless," it declares. A similar aura glows from the architect's hand, seemingly the same as Jinwoo's skill, and the two forces collide violently. Jinwoo is pushed back and realizes the architect can use the same kind of skill, making long-range attacks ineffective. The architect mocks him again, saying it doesn't matter whether Jinwoo kills it or not. The answers he seeks are already predetermined. Weapons from the statues begin flying toward the architect, attaching to its 8 hands, each wielding a different type of weapon. Jinwoo summons his daggers in response and asks how all of this was designed, and how the architect gave him power. The architect responds that it didn't choose Jinwoo and was, in fact, against the idea. It claims to be merely the architect and moderator of the player breeding system. "My design is perfect," it declares. Jinwoo sees he has only 6 minutes and 19 seconds remaining. He resolves to face the architect head-on. The architect also prepares to use its full power for the remaining time, leaping into the air and diving down, causing a massive shockwave upon impact. Jinwoo avoids it and rushes in, clashing weapons with the architect at blinding speed. Suddenly, Jinwoo's senses sharpen, and he wonders what's happening. "I can do this," he thinks. He begins to sense every attack from the architect, even the swings of its long sword, spear, blade, axe, and hammer. Jinwoo dodges them all effortlessly. The architect, now surprised, is using full power and still failing to land a blow. Jinwoo retaliates with a flurry of rapid slashes, cutting off the architect's hands one by one. Screaming in pain, the architect is shocked that even in its fake body, Jinwoo can inflict pain. Looking at Jinwoo, the architect realizes this might be why he was chosen. Jinwoo, with a serious expression, prepares to end the fight. The architect, now furious, yells, "You're just a mere human. How dare you?" As time ticks down to 3 minutes and 45 seconds, the statues defeated earlier begin to move again, including the statue of God. Wasting no time, Jinwoo leaps to the center of the statues, activates Dominator's authority, and releases a powerful aura that disperses them. With 3 minutes and 15 seconds remaining, he dashes past the statue of God, skillfully dodging its massive attacks, and storms through the remaining statues, unleashing a flurry of slashes upon the architect, severing its limbs once again. The architect counters with a slash that hits Jinwoo, but with only limited time left, Jinwoo endures the blow and presses on. He's blocked by a statue wielding a shield, the same one from his first encounter in the dungeon. Enraged at the memory, he leaps high and crushes the statue's head with his elbow. Jinwoo resumes his assault, slicing off more of the architect's arms. With just 2 minutes and 21 seconds remaining, a massive explosion occurs. As the dust settles, Jinwoo is seen pinning the architect to the ground, his dagger at its throat. The architect finally surrenders. The test is over, it declares. Jinwoo remains poised above it, surrounded by shattered stone and the remnants of their intense battle. The chapter ends with Jinwoo victorious over the architect, with 2 minutes and 11 seconds to spare. Chapter 128 begins with the architect pointing at Jinwoo, telling him, "The answer is within you." Jinwoo is stunned by the architect's words. Suddenly, a notification appears in his system. The data stored in your memory will be retrieved. Below the message is a choice, accept or decline. The architect, grinning ominously, tells Jinwoo that the decision is his. Jinwoo reads the message silently, deep in thought. After a moment of serious contemplation, he accepts. His eyes glow with light as the system confirms. Data successfully retrieved. A brilliant flash and a powerful gust of wind engulf the space around them. Jinwoo's vision fades into a blinding golden light. When it clears, he finds himself in an entirely different place, under a purple sky. Below him lies an endless army of magic beasts, stretching as far as the eye can see. So numerous are they that the ground is no longer visible beneath them. It's a horrifying sight. Jinwoo notices the monsters are all looking up, and he wonders aloud. What are they looking at? Following their gaze, Jinwoo sees a massive black shape floating in the sky. At first, it looks like a dark lake, but upon closer inspection, he realizes it's a colossal gate, so large it could be mistaken for a hole swallowing the purple sky. The realization hits him. A purple sky and endless monsters. This place isn't Earth. Jinwoo's gaze scans the horde below, smaller beasts, high orcs, ice slayers, even giants. No matter the rank or type, they're all staring upward, waiting. If these creatures were to ever cross into Earth through a gate, humanity would be doomed. Suddenly, the giant black gate begins to crack. It shatters violently, releasing a swarm of winged soldiers clad in silver armor. They descend like angry bees, filling the sky as the beasts fill the land. The spectacle is breathtaking. The silver soldiers blow majestic horns as they charge into battle. Jinwoo immediately understands what's coming. It's war. The soldiers strike the ground like silver lightning. More gates open, and reinforcements pour out. The clash begins as magic beasts and silver soldiers collide in an epic battle. The sounds of weapons clashing and armor shattering fill the air. Screams of pain replace war cries. The silver soldiers, immensely powerful, decimate the beasts. One is seen holding a beast's head in one hand, his sword in the other. Just when the battle seems lost for the beasts, the silver soldiers abruptly halt. A new presence enters the field, a shadow knight, fully clad in black armor, riding a fearsome steed. A dark, ominous aura surrounds him. He utters a single word, "Arise." Jinwoo, stunned, watches as the knight activates Monarch's domain and shadow extraction. A black ripple spreads rapidly, turning the blood-stained battlefield into a sea of shadows. The newly formed shadow soldiers rise with glowing eyes, no longer afraid of the enemy. Their cries are haunting, somewhere between roars and screams. The sky soldiers begin to tremble. Jinwoo wonders, could he be the monarch of shadows? The monarch continues to emit a sinister aura, his steed equally terrifying. The monsters that died begin to rise again, their blood turning dense and black, granting them newfound strength. As countless shadow soldiers emerge, Jinwoo can't help but think, he's nothing compared to this being. The resurrected beasts surge forward once more, launching a counterattack on the silver soldiers. Another brutal battle erupts. Explosions shake the battlefield. Although the silver soldiers initially had the upper hand, the arrival of the monarch has completely shifted the tide of war. The monarch of shadows enters the fray, galloping through enemies, his sword cleaving through silver soldiers with ease. He gathers energy in his hand, unleashing an enormous spectral hand from the sky that crushes his enemies. Jinwoo, still observing, realizes the monarch is using Dominator's authority. The shadow soldiers repeated a cycle of death and rebirth, relentlessly overwhelming the enemy. Wherever the monarch went, destruction followed in his wake. Victory for the shadow forces seemed inevitable, until unexpected arrivals changed everything. The scene shifts back to the double dungeon's entrance, where members of the Hunters Guild, including Wu Jinshul, have gathered. Hunter Jong-in questions whether Jinshul is certain that Jinwoo is inside, sensing an enormous amount of mana. Jinshul confirms Jinwoo's presence. Hunter Cha Haein, however, is confused. The mana she senses doesn't belong to Jinwoo. Jinshul recalls something Jinwoo once told him, that he wasn't the one who originally cleared the double dungeon. That memory troubles him. It can't be just a coincidence, he thinks. The group opens the dungeon door and is shocked by what they see. Jong-in mutters, "What the hell, what is this place?" The chamber is filled with shattered stone statues and debris. Jinshul, equally stunned, realizes the truth. The statue of God and the stone sculptures truly exist. Suddenly, a voice echoes, "It's the architect." Upon noticing the humans, he says with a smirk, "Oh, what's this? I don't recall inviting humans here." The hunters are shocked, fear evident on their faces, as the kneeling architect beside Jinwoo slowly rises. Its wings are shredded, and it's missing an arm. The architect stands tall, scanning the intruders, and grins. Another unexpected surprise, it says. A hunter whispers, Did that monster just talk?" Another adds, astonished, "It's speaking human language." The statue gestures and commands, "Silence. How dare you disturb the king's slumber?" The hunters question, who's the king he's talking about? Meanwhile, Jinwoo remains standing, still entranced by the vision the architect is showing him. One of the hunters finally notices Jinwoo and asks, "What's he doing over there?" But before they can move, the architect releases a series of rapid slashes, cutting through 3 hunters in an instant. The others freeze in shock. Haein glares at the architect. The chapter ends as the architect smiles wickedly and declares, "You strong humans will make excellent first offerings to the king." The chapter began with the shadow monarch glancing over his shoulder, even with the enemy standing directly in front of him. At the same moment, Jinwoo also turned his gaze. His eyes widened in shock at what he saw. 2 enormous gates appeared, as large as the ones already floating in the sky above. One glowed a deep crimson red, the other an intense blue. Cracks split the surface of the blue gate, and soon it shattered open. From within surged a sea of flags and banners, noble crests waving in the air as demon-armored knights and soldiers charged forward. Jinwoo recognized every insignia on the fluttering flags: Ricardo, Pydos, Roken, Ingrass, and even Riduru, the clan to which Essel belonged. Moments later, the red gate cracked open as well. From within came an enormous wolf, a monstrous creature the size of a mountain. It charged forward, and with just one step of its massive paw, the ground beneath it cracked and trembled. Following close behind were countless animal-type magical beasts, all pouring out of the Crimson Gate in a chaotic stampede. 2 factions had emerged, distinct and terrifying. One was composed of demon-armored knights, led by a powerful-looking demon radiating authority. The other was a feral horde of animal-type magical beasts, led by the towering giant wolf that had first charged through the gate. Both forces now stood before the Shadow Monarch, who simply stared at them, his dark gaze unwavering and unreadable. The scene shifted back to the double dungeon. Jongin barked out commands with urgency. "Healer, heal Hunter Myung-chul right now. Use everything you've got. Move the wounded to the rear." The healer nodded and reassured Myung-chul. "Almost done. Hang in there." But before they could catch their breath, something terrifying occurred. The massive statues, those Jinwoo had once defeated, rose again, as if they had never been harmed at all. Their cold, unblinking eyes glowed with power. Then, the architect spoke with a cruel grin on his face. "Whoever remains alive by the time all my puppets fall shall be given the great honor of witnessing the king's birth." Behind him stood the statue of God, towering, divine, and dreadful. Without warning, beams of light shot from the statue's eyes. Jong-in's instincts kicked in. "Watch out," he shouted. The beams condensed into a massive laser that swept across the battlefield, exploding on contact and leaving devastation in its wake. Jong-in managed to dodge just in time and immediately retaliated. A sharp spark appeared in his hand as he summoned a fireball, launching it toward the statue. The blast struck, shaking the air. "Now, take this chance to destroy the statues," Jong-in yelled. Wu Jin-chul didn't hesitate. He charged at full speed and delivered a powerful punch to one of the statues, aiming directly at its face. But when his fist landed, his expression changed. No damage. Not even a scratch. "It's way sturdier than I expected," he thought. Suddenly, another large explosion erupted behind them, another of Jong-in's attacks. He turned to the others. "They're highly resistant to physical attacks. Be careful." As the smoke cleared from the statue's face, Jong-in's expression darkened. "No effect, even with powerful magic. Do they have resistance to spells too?" Elsewhere on the battlefield, the other members of the Hunters Guild were locked in combat against countless statue monsters. Fear and confusion were etched on their faces. "My taunt skill isn't working on any of them," Sun Ki-hoon shouted. "Even my basic psychokinetic spell has no effect. They're not moving at all," Gina added. Jong-in overheard this, and his worry deepened. Do we really have no other options left? His gaze shifted to the distance. Jinwoo. His only hope now was to awaken Jinwoo. Is he hypnotized? Possessed? Whatever it is, this is the only way. Without hesitation, Jong-in cast a fireball straight at Jinwoo, whispering in his mind, "No matter what's happening to him, this is to wake him up." The fireball streaked through the air, heading directly toward Jinwoo. But just before impact, someone appeared in its path. The architect. With unnatural speed, he intercepted the fireball and swatted it away effortlessly. His eyes flared with fury as he rushed toward Jong-in. "How dare you disturb the king's slumber?" As the architect closed the distance, several figures suddenly dashed to intercept him, members of the surveillance team. Wu Jin-chul shouted, "We'll take care of things here. Haein, please wake up Sung Jinwoo." "Got it," Cha Haein responded, immediately speeding off toward Jinwoo. Her eyes locked on his unmoving form as she approached rapidly. The scene shifted once more, to the vision being shown to Jinwoo by the architect. He watched as the armies of demon clans and magical beasts clashed against the Shadow Army in an all-out war. The battlefield roared with chaos and death. But no matter how many times the Shadow soldiers were destroyed, they regenerated endlessly. Jinwoo observed in awe. "If they were my summons, I would have run out of mana a long time ago. The monarch, he must have a bottomless pit of mana." He watched as one of the shadow monsters was torn apart by a powerful, animal-type beast. The war raged on. More and more demon warriors and beasts poured out from the two gates, mercilessly slaughtering the shadow soldiers. There was no infighting. They were united in their purpose. This wasn't a war between rival factions. It was a war between monsters and silver soldiers. Was the Shadow Monarch not on the same side as the monsters? Or was there internal conflict among the monarchs? Jinwoo wondered. Jinwoo noticed the Shadow Monarch's black horse in the distance, its body pierced by both a spear and a sword. The battlefield was a sea of blood and corpses. The flame of war had consumed all. At last, only a few figures remained. The Shadow Monarch stood before a lone demon, slumped against a jagged rock, catching its breath. Though the demon's face was obscured by a helmet, the monarch recognized him. "We could have ended the war today," the monarch said. "Why did you betray me?" The demon slowly looked up. Gravely wounded, it was barely clinging to life. "What could have been?" it muttered. "We could have exterminated all of you." But the monarch's voice grew colder. "I asked why you betrayed me." The demon laughed faintly, then replied in an ancient language Jinwoo couldn't understand. The monarch's eyes narrowed. He reached out and gripped the demon by its neck, lifting him off the ground. The demon choked and gurgled in pain. The metal plating on his neck bent and crumpled under the monarch's crushing grip, but even in his final moments, the demon continued speaking, still in that unknown tongue. Then, with a final squeeze, the shadow monarch crushed the demon's neck. Blood spilled from the demon's mouth, and its body went limp. The monarch's thumb dug deeper into its flesh as he released the corpse. Suddenly, Jinwoo felt something strange. Observing the demon's gaze, his heart began to pound violently. A strange familiarity overcame him. "Where have I seen those eyes before?" he wondered, as the sound of his heartbeat echoed loudly in his ears. The shadow monarch then released the demon's lifeless body, letting it collapse to the ground with a heavy thud. Jinwoo trembled. He could barely comprehend what he was witnessing. His heartbeat continued to accelerate as he reached out with shaking hands and removed the demon's helmet. The cold metal clattered onto the ground. Beneath it was a face. It was Baron, the Demon King. The very same face Jinwoo had once seen atop the demon castle. Recognition crashed over him. But before he could react, another shocking revelation struck. His body, his hands, his feet, his chest was encased in black armor. Jinwoo wondered, realizing with a jolt that he was no longer just watching. He was already in the shadow monarch's body, observing through his eyes. Then, something even stranger occurred. A rhythmic pulse, steady, but not from the left side of his chest. Instead, Jinwoo felt a faint, glowing heartbeat on the right, one that radiated with a strange purple hue. Instinctively, he placed a hand over his chest, trying to calm the erratic thudding within. But instead of moving to the left, his hand shifted to the right, where a second heartbeat pulsed beneath the armor. Two hearts, beating in perfect unison. Before he could even begin to process the magnitude of these revelations, something else pulled at his attention, something far more ominous. From above, massive shadows began to descend. Jinwoo looked up slowly. Falling toward him were 4 angels, each one bearing 6 radiant wings. Their divine presence was overwhelming, both awe-inspiring and terrifying in equal measure. They loomed in the sky like executioners of fate. And then, everything vanished. Darkness engulfed Jinwoo once more as the vision came to an abrupt end. The chapter concluded with a single notification ringing out from the system. The playback of retrieved data has ended. The chapter opens with Hunter Ahjin standing face-to-face with the architect. With a sly smile, the architect comments, "You're quite amusing indeed," and taunts her to try a bit harder to break free from my design. He questions whether she doesn't even want to try. Despite his words, Ahjin says nothing. Instead, she activates her skill sword dance, her eyes blazing with fury as a golden aura engulfs her entire body. Upon seeing her power, the architect grins and says, "There you go." Just like that, before laughing. All of Ahjin's attacks are parried effortlessly by the architect using his sword. With a single powerful slash, he wounds her shoulder, causing her to scream in pain and stagger back. The architect then points his sword at them mockingly and laughs. "Is this really all you can do? Everything is proceeding exactly according to my design. How boring you humans are," he sneers. He explains that the system he created can predict and respond to every possible outcome. Watching helplessly, Hunter Jong-in and Woo Jinchul look on with fear and concern etched on their faces. The architect continues, "There's no way you can defeat my creation with such feeble attempts. But perhaps this is the best you can do." Around them, the other hunters struggle as they're overwhelmed by the relentless attacks of the statues. Some try to heal their wounded comrades, but the situation grows more dire as more beast-like statues attack. Suddenly, a fireball hits the architect's face, but to no avail. He's completely unscathed and still smiling. The attack came from Jong-in, who stands firmly and says, "We need to wake up Sung Jinwoo. He's the only way." In a desperate move, the wounded Haein dashes toward Jinwoo, coordinating her movement with Jongin's attack. But the architect moves swiftly and intercepts her. Just in time, Haein manages to dodge his attack, which crashes into the ground and causes a chain of massive explosions, leaving the ground cracked and scorched. Despite her injury, she presses on toward Jinwoo. The architect, now mildly impressed, says, "Not bad," after seeing Haein evade his strike. But then his eyes widen in shock. A shadow emerges from Haein's body. He exclaims that the rules of this room do not allow such entities to manifest. And yet, undeniably, it is a shadow. Did the king really plant a soldier inside her? The architect mutters, stunned. He demands to know how they found this place and what her relationship with Jinwoo is. With a resolute expression and her hand clutching her wounded shoulder, Haein replies, "We're his friends. We're here to rescue him." The architect ponders aloud. Perhaps this wasn't the king's doing after all. Then he offers her a rare opportunity. "Very well. One of the great monarchs is about to descend upon this world. I'll let you witness this glorious event." Behind him, a purple aura begins emanating from Jinwoo's body. However, the architect adds menacingly, "But your little human friends, they shall die here, now." The other hunters are shown being surrounded by massive, powerful statues. Suddenly, a voice interrupts, "Not on my watch." The architect turns in shock, and from the side, Jinwoo appears, delivering a devastating punch straight to the architect's face, cracking his stone visage. The architect screams in pain, his stone face crumbling. Jinwoo coldly asks, "What did you do to my body?" A glowing purple heart pulses in his chest. He readies another strike. The other hunters are shocked and filled with hope. Jinwoo is awake. Without hesitation, Jinwoo slams his foot into the architect's face, sending him crashing to the ground. Fear now visible on the architect's face, he mutters. It seems he's not the king. Confused and frightened, he questions why he is here instead and how he can maintain consciousness with that black heart. Jinwoo, noticing the heart-shaped purple glow in his chest, thinks, "So this insane amount of mana, it's because of this heart." Suddenly, a system notification appears before him. He has earned the title Demon Hunter, having met the requirements after defeating Baron, the monarch of White Flames. The system states that an incredible power has acknowledged the player as its master. He also sees the effect of the Black Heart, plus 100,000 mana. Jinwoo begins to deduce. The Black Heart wasn't part of the architect's grand design. It was never intended to make him stronger. He also realizes that the retrieved system data didn't give him all the answers. He still doesn't know the full story. He demands answers from the architect. "You told me before you were against choosing me as a player. So what exactly is a player? And what were you planning to do with me?" The architect's eyes widen in terror. "Could it be?" he mutters. Then he screams in rage. "Monarch of Shadows, how could you do this to us? Do you think the other monarchs will just let you get away with this?" Jinwoo summons 4 daggers, all pointed at the architect's face. Calmly but firmly, he says, "Then answer my questions." Though clearly afraid, the architect laughs and admits Jinwoo is truly unpredictable. Now he understands why the system chose him. Meanwhile, the other hunters notice something terrifying. The previously motionless statues are beginning to move. The architect laughs maniacally and warns that if he dies, no one will be able to stop his puppets. He challenges Jinwoo, asking if he really thinks he can kill him. Jinwoo, blood in his eyes, responds seriously. "What if I kill you first, then deal with your puppets after?" The architect starts to speak. "I'm the architect of the system. If you kill me, then..." But Jinwoo cuts him off with a cold smile. "I'd return to being an E-rank hunter." Jinwoo explains that he already considered this. But a system doesn't collapse just because its creator disappears, does it? He continues, "In that case, I'll take it by force." Suddenly, countless system notifications flood the screen. The architect's face fills with dread. A final message appears before him. The system has denied the administrator's access. Shocked, the architect asks aloud, "What's happening?" as he watches his access being revoked. Jinwoo stands firm. Flashbacks reveal how he realized that the system needed him as much as he needed it. If he was meant to be someone's avatar, then he would use the system in ways they never intended. With a chilling gaze, Jinwoo makes his decision. He would devour the system itself. He says to the architect, "Seems your design wasn't so perfect after all." With one final desperate cry, the architect yells, "How dare you, you bastard!" Just then, Jinwoo's daggers fly forward, slicing the architect's body into pieces. As his crumbling face begins to disintegrate, he mutters his final words. A prediction? No, a prophecy. When the pillars of fire holding the heavens are raised, an inevitable death shall approach you. With a trembling finger, he points at Jinwoo before his body crumbles to dust. Jinwoo merely looks at him coldly and replies, "As you please." Before we wrap up this arc, if you enjoyed the video, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Thank you. The chapter begins just outside the double dungeon, where the dungeon gate stands ominously before a gathering of hunters and agents from the Hunter Association. Tension hangs thick in the air as they wait in uncertainty. A male hunter remarks that it's been over an hour since the Hunters Guild entered the dungeon, questioning why it's taking them so long. A female hunter adds with a hint of sarcasm that if it had been their own guild who went in, they would have been totally wiped out. Suddenly, faint silhouettes emerge from the dungeon. It's the Hunters Guild and the surveillance team. They're bloodied, exhausted, and barely able to walk. Among them is Jong-in, being supported by Haein. Shock and fear ripple through the waiting hunters as they take in the sight. These are elite hunters, yet they look completely beaten down. One mutters in disbelief. What in the world happened inside a C-rank gate? Jinchul quickly approaches the members of the Courage Guild, asking for their help in transporting the wounded. The hunters, visibly stunned, agree without hesitation. Moments later, Jinwoo exits the gate. His clothes are torn, his body bruised. In his mind, he reflects that while he found some answers, the real architect is likely elsewhere. He wishes he could have stayed longer. Perhaps the architect would have revealed more. Jinchul walks up to Jinwoo and informs him that 20 of the highest-ranking hunters have died in this raid. He adds that if this had turned into a dungeon break, the damage would have been unimaginable. He then asks Jinwoo if he tried to clear the dungeon alone. Jinwoo replies that he reported the double dungeon to the Courage Guild, but didn't think anyone would actually come to help. He blames himself for the hunters' deaths, saying he survived only thanks to the Hunters Guild and the surveillance team. Jinchul reassures him that the surveillance team is always alerted when an S-rank hunter takes action, and the decision to involve the Hunters Guild was his own. Still, the outcome was undeniably tragic. He then asks Jinwoo how he knew there was a double dungeon. Jinwoo calmly replies, "The dungeon called to me." Shocked, Jinchul presses him for details. Jinwoo says he received a message, but only in his head, invisible to anyone else. Jinchul studies him, realizing Jinwoo isn't lying. He thinks to himself that Jinwoo is beyond his understanding. As Jinwoo begins to leave, Haein approaches and asks if he's okay. Jinwoo responds with a faint smile, "Yeah, of course I'm," but suddenly wobbles, saying, "No, maybe I'm a bit tired," before collapsing to the ground unconscious. Meanwhile, in Japan, several trucks filled with mana crystals arrive, 200,000 tons, as requested by Yuri Orlov, who plans to use them to suppress an S-rank gate. Seeing the volume, Yuri comments that it's more than enough for the magic circle he's constructing. Once the barrier is built, it will begin drawing mana from the crystals and become self-sustaining. But how strange, he mutters. An agent beside him asks if something's wrong. Yuri brushes it off, saying the barrier is perfect, but he senses something nearby. The agent wonders if it's just someone foolish enough to be on the streets with a dungeon break looming. Yuri, looking up at a nearby building, replies, "I never said it was a person." A mysterious man stands atop the building, observing below. Noting the hunter's sharp senses, he muses that it's not surprising, given the source of his power. Then he whispers, "Regardless, it finally begins." Everything is going according to plan, to the predetermined tragedy. As he looks at the massive S-rank gate before him, soldiers, tanks, and members of the Blade Guild are stationed around the gate, ready for the worst. Tawada, a Blade Guild hunter, comments that modern weapons are ineffective against beasts, questioning the point of mobilizing an army. Reiji responds that if Yuri Orlov's strategy fails, someone needs to buy time for the frontline hunters to prepare. Tawada cynically notes that they're essentially human shields. Reiji adds, As long as we're stationed here on the front lines, we hunters are no different, gazing solemnly at the dark S-rank gate. It just goes to show how helpless humans are in the face of pure destruction. Yuri, walking with another agent, exclaims with pride that if all goes well, he alone can take care of the gate. He dreams of being remembered as the man who single-handedly brought down an S-rank gate, but humbly adds that someone else might deserve that title more. The agent warns him about his drinking, but Yuri dismisses the concern, saying it calms his nerves. He lifts a bottle, smiling. I'm about to put on the greatest show they've ever seen. This calls for a toast. After a drink, he asks how many S-rank hunters are on standby. The agent replies, 15 in total. Yuri scoffs. Quite a small audience, eh? He then asks what the Americans are doing and whether they've sent any hunters to Japan. The agent reveals that an S-rank gate has appeared in Maryland, and more gates have spawned across the UK, India, and several other countries. Realizing this, Yuri notes that nations all over the world are suffering from a shortage of capable hunters. Suddenly, the gate before them begins to tremble. The agent's face turns pale in horror. The gate shatters, releasing an immense burst of energy. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Jinwoo awakens in a hospital room after collapsing. Jinho rushes in, tears in his eyes, overwhelmed with relief that Jinwoo is finally awake. He tells Jinwoo that he's been asleep for 3 days. Jinwoo is shocked. He wonders if his fatigue had truly built up that much, though he admits he hasn't taken a break in a long time. Still, the war shown to him by the architect keeps playing in his mind. Then it hits him. If he's been unconscious for 3 days, that means... He urgently asks Jinho for an update. Jinho is confused and asks what kind of update. Jinwoo clarifies. The S-rank gate in Japan, what happened? Jinho looks down, somber, and replies with just one word. Well, back in Japan, the S-rank gate opens. Panic and dread fill the area as a massive foot stomps out of the gate, creating a thunderous explosion. Beasts begin pouring out, giants, and not just one, but many. Each carries weapons and emits an overwhelming aura. The hunter's eyes widen in disbelief. Giants usually only appear as bosses in the most difficult A-rank gates. Yuri Orlov steps forward confidently. This will be easy peasy, he says, channeling green energy from his hand and directing it toward the gate. He challenges the giant. Come at me. The mana crystals surge, fueling Yuri's magic circle and forming a powerful barrier around the gate. A giant strikes the barrier with a massive sword, but it holds firm. Yuri laughs smugly, mocking the beasts. These pipsqueaks think they can break my barrier? These are the kind of monsters you'd find in a mere A-rank gate. Suddenly, a massive hand grabs the attacking giant, slamming it aside with ease. A much larger giant steps out of the gate, 3 times the size of the first. Yuri's face turns from arrogance to pure terror. The new giant swings its colossal blade, slicing through Yuri's barrier like it was paper. And thus ends the double dungeon arc. The next arc, titled the Japan Crisis Arc, wherein when a catastrophic S-rank gate opens in Tokyo and the Japanese government's elite strike force fails to contain the threat, Sung Jinwoo steps forward, determined to face the looming disaster himself.